What is the most inappropriate school prank you have pulled? I came up with the genius idea for a prank as a senior. It was to create a mandatory PP inspection that was going to be run by someone with the name of Mike Roch and had it labeled as a graduation requirement. I cobbled up the document on my school Chromebook, working on and off on it for the next couple of weeks, adding a tweak here, editing a date here, changing the wording there, forgetting it here and there. Eventually I found my time to strike, and I was elated that some of my friends found it humorous and encouraged this prank to be done. Now the setup. I've been in the school theater club for about 3 years now. I've familiarized myself with the way it works and the way rehearsals usually work out. I found my opportunity to strike, the 8 p.m. rehearsal days. I left for home, bringing a roll of scotch tape and the magnum opus that I created on my school Chromebook. I waited until rehearsals started and conjured my plan while I was tuning my guitars. I would wait until the 5-minute break before I strike on the unsuspecting school. So I did just that. A couple hours passed after the final bell of the day rang and I conveniently had to take a bathroom break. Additionally, it was extremely convenient that the baseball team had just left the bathroom in question, which gave me the impression that I would have something to fall back on if my genius plan did not go according. I stood in front of the door, the restroom, unsuspecting on how I was about to defile it, and so I struck. Adrenaline pumped through my veins as I dug through my book bag, pulling out my folder and pulling out the roll of scotch tape and tainting the stalls with my product. After 1 short minute, my prank was complete. I walked out of the bathroom pretending to be oblivious to what had just transpired, and I kept it that way. The next day, I woke up to dozens of reposts of the supposed mandatory PP inspections that were supposed to happen at school the following day. It spread quickly among grade levels, the post being shared over and over again on different profiles, being exposed to different eyes each time. It got to a point where the school was alerted and then became a taboo topic to speak about. Any mention from that day about the PP inspection was met with scolding and threats of detention. Seniors and underclassmen were called down to the office by the number, only to be met with interrogating about what had transpired. Here's where I messed up. Not only did I forget about the camera that's in the hallway in front of the bathroom, but the fact it was only the theater club and baseball team in the school, which narrowed the suspects down quite significantly. Did I also mention the day of the inspection was the day of the theater production? Nope, I did not. This amalgamation of not only's created quite the interesting scenario for the following day. I had slept in on the day of the show. My plan to show up during my last period to show up before we began to ready the equipment and leave enough time to touch up any areas that might be work. I woke up to various missed calls by one of my band members, telling me that I messed up and that I was in a lot of crap. One thing came to mind, the PP inspection. My bandmate had told me that I was at risk of getting kicked out of the show or even having the show cancelled altogether and having my graduation revoked if measures were to be taken that drastically. He told me that the principal required me at school that instant and threatened me with various disciplinary measures. I rushed to school, frantically getting out of the house and sprinting down the sidewalk trying to get to school as quickly as possible. When I finally got to the school, I was greeted by the ever-so-friendly Ring doorbell summoning me to the office that instant. I timidly entered, trying my best to play stupid. I was being scolded for missing most of the school day. My moment of relief was quickly cut short by the piercing yell of my name down the office. My principal looked at me with a fiery scowl, eyeing me down across the room like a lion readying for its next prey. She told me to go on with my day and that we were going to have a pleasant chat after. My body was filled with terror the remaining 3 periods. I trudged through the hallways with ice in my veins, terrified of the impending scolding later. Fast forward to the end of the school day, I was walking down the hallway when I heard my name being called on the intercom. My body froze, my heart skipped a beat, and my mind went numb for an instant. I had felt the cold hand of death on my very body that instant. Knowing very well this was self-inflicted, I had no escape as my legs walked to the office, my body wanting to run the opposite direction. What justification did I have for this, you may ask? If you know it was going to cause this much of a turmoil, what could possibly be the justification? It's funny. I walked with a pale face down to the office and was called down into the principal's personal office. The door slammed behind me and I stood before my principal, my stomach in my throat. She pulled out one of the inspection papers and slid it on the desk across to me. Do you recognize this? She began to read the first sentence and I could see the stern look on her face breaking slowly. She began to have a change of heart and wanted me to take accountability of it and realize that it was indeed a mess up. I was allowed to participate in the show as the lead guitarist, and I also am able to let this slide with little to no consequence, with the only notable punishment not being able to participate in a school barbecue the following week, which wasn't exactly world-ending to me, but all is well. My partner broke our rules. I want to preface the original event took place in December of 2022. However, this still affects me in a lot of daily aspects of life. My partner, 24, and I, 22, had a free use agreement. This is an intimate rule regarding we can play with each other at any time even if one is asleep. One of the major rules was that proper precautions would be used, liquid, latex, whatever, for whatever play we wanted to do. This was to prevent injury, surprise kids, etc. We were monogamous, so diseases weren't a major concern. One morning he decided while I was asleep that he wanted to do butt intimacy. Which I am fine with and I enjoy greatly when done correctly. Only he didn't, he decided to force himself in dry. Which caused a major fissure, tear, and a hemorrhoid to form that was so painful I needed to go to the ER. The entire injury took over a month to heal from and was not easy. My biggest problem now is, I get them chronically. I don't know if I can remember a time that I didn't have one recently because they are that chronic. I am now unable to enjoy any pleasure there, and he never took accountability, blaming my jokes about the cleanup afterwards as a sign he shouldn't use any liquid. He even gets frustrated that I have pain there now. And I just want to scream at him, how this is his own fault. I haven't really been able to tell anyone. I told my doctor I had an injury and now I get them chronically. She prescribed the cortisone steroid suppository, it doesn't do much of anything. So now I am left with this awful, embarrassing health condition. They make me feel unwantable, on top of everything else, and unho. And I don't know what to do anymore. What's the most incriminating thing you've ever done that you got away with? I caught my wife having an affair with her work friend, by sifting through her phone while she was in the shower until I found some very explicit texts. Like, description of his D and begged for ASX, the type I can't remember. So I'd shed for something like 20 minutes, until I found a way to get into her texts with my phone number. Found a ton more subtle stuff, like, I can't wait to see you again. What are you doing after work? And the like, as well as some of his very explicit stuff. I got a hold of my best friend, who's a pretty solid dude, and we hammered out what to do. I wanted to confront them, but he thought that was a terrible idea, since I was super angry and emotional and it would get ugly very fast. So we decided that we'd find out when they were hooking up next based on the texts, and we'd ambush them. I went in first, while she stayed across the street with the car running to get out quick if we needed. I walked right up to my wife, told her exactly what I had learned, and I said that I wanted to meet her lover right then and there. She got scared, stuttered, acted confused and tried to say that it wasn't what it looked like. I told her that I didn't care at this point, so let's do it. She was shocked enough that her lover didn't even come out of the bathroom, so she went in and got him, and I introduced myself. I told him that I wanted to know what his intentions were, what he wanted from my wife, and told him that if I caught so much as a whiff of continued datalking I would ruin him. I told my wife that if she wanted to be with this guy, she needed to make it happen right then and there. They awkwardly went off to the side to talk, while I sat there waiting. After a good 10 minutes, my friend texted me to say they were coming. I asked what they had decided, and my friend said duh, he messed up and it's all over now. So, my wife comes over, very red-faced and looking shame-faced, and said well, I guess this is over. He doesn't want to continue. I told her exactly what I thought of her actions and told her to get out of the house. She cried a little and begged for another chance, but I wasn't having it. She packed up a bag and left, and I haven't seen her since. It was tough, since I was 10 years older than her and we'd been together since before she turned 18, but I knew that I couldn't just patch things up with her and hope that things would work out. She's moved to England while the whole thing cools down, but I know that I never want to see her again. My fiancé's graduation party for his master's might be my deal breaker. We met in college and decided to not get married until we graduated to focus on our studies, and we have been dating for 4 years. He proposed to me during his last semester of his master's program, and he is studying to become a teacher. I graduated with my bachelor's not too long ago, but his graduation party is showing a side of him that I believe to be a deal breaker. His graduation party will be held at his father's, who has a pretty big backyard, and many of the people from our wedding will be going. However, unlike our wedding invitation list, he said he didn't want to invite Jason, fake name, and his parents because he recently came out as gay, and that led to a conversation. Jason and his parents were invited to our wedding, so that made me ask why he didn't want them at the graduation. He said that the wedding was an us thing and that he was willing to compromise because it was our wedding. But when it came to the graduation, he said it was a him thing because he was the one who graduated, so he didn't have to compromise because he did the school work. When I asked what he meant by compromise, he said he'd tolerate Jason at our wedding because that's what couples do, but the graduation was about him. When I asked if he'd support potential future children that came out, he said he'd tolerate it for me, although he disagreed with it. It is my fault for not asking that question earlier before we became engaged, but he made his stance clear. He said he'd be more distant to a child that turned out to be gay and would probably let me do more of the parenting if so. He's always been a gentleman and amazing to me, but he grew up religious, parents were Christians, although he said he's not anymore. I don't think we have a future after he said he would distance himself from a child who came out and leave it to me, and I just want to ask how to tell him so. I'm thinking another conversation like we had, but I want to ask for the best way to go about it. What would be the best way to tell him that I don't think we have a future together given his stance? What is your Tinder horror story? My Tinder nightmare began when I started texting with a beautiful woman who I knew was out of my league. I'm a 50-year-old Caucasian guy, out of shape, overweight, but otherwise stable and normal. She was a 30-year-old woman, college educated, stunningly beautiful and very elegant and slender. Nonetheless, after a few days of texting, I invited her to join me for dinner at a very nice restaurant downtown. To my dismay, she actually accepted my invitation. I was waiting for her at the bar, and when she walked in, my jaw hit the floor. She was so beautiful I literally lost my breath for a moment. She was taller than me in her heels and was wearing a beautiful short dress with the most amazing legs I'd ever seen. She greeted me with a bright smile and a gentle hug, and we were escorted to our table. We had a very good date, the conversation flowed, and she seemed to have a good time as well. We decided to continue the date and went to a couple of bars for drinks. Finally, she said it was time to go home, and, since she had taken Uber earlier, I offered to give her a ride home and she quickly agreed. All this time I thought that, even though the date was fun and comfortable, I assumed it would possibly lead to a friendship at best, considering the obvious differences. Well, when we got to her place, we talked for a few minutes more. I offered to walk her to her door, but she declined. She then got out and walked around to my door. She leaned through the window and planted a very brief but sensual kiss on my lips. My heart stopped. She then leaned back and smiled. I was able to stammer out an invitation to go out again, and she accepted without hesitation. I was on cloud 9. I knew that this remarkable woman would have a profound effect on my life. It seemed predestined. Fast forward a couple of weeks, she and I had been seeing each other nearly every day and I was developing strong feelings already. But something was wrong. I had a weird nagging sense that she was hiding something. Although she was being very affectionate, something just felt off. Then finally it happened. We were out at a bar together. It was a good time but she seemed distracted. As we were leaving she turned to me and said, in a serious tone, "We need to talk." I thought, this is it. The differences between us are too much for her and I'm about to be friend-zoned. But nothing prepared me for what came next. She asked me to just listen and not say anything, and I agreed. She then started out by saying that she had developed strong feelings for me but there was something that I needed to know about her that might make me want to change my mind about pursuing a relationship. My mind was spinning and so many scenarios raced through my head. Is she married? Is she a criminal? Then I remembered a few days earlier when we were making out and I touched her chest lightly and realized that she had implants. She looked at me, and with a tear in her eye, she told me that she has stage 4 cancer. She was originally diagnosed 4 years earlier as stage 3 and had beaten it back into remission along with radiation treatment and chemotherapy. Now it had returned to stage 4 and she was to start chemo again in 2 weeks. I was floored. She then stated that she would understand if I wanted to turn and run and she wouldn't think less of me for it. My response was to reiterate that I adored her, and I thought she was an amazing woman and if she wanted me to take this journey with her that I would be honored to do so. We kissed and just held each other for a while. Finally she said goodnight and went to her car to go home. I cried all the way home. We had a full amazing year together. I had to go to Japan for work and she met me there in between chemo treatments. She never cried and was always elegant. I learned what the true definition of grace meant. We lived a lifetime in the short time we had. She passed away 9 months ago, 15 months after we met. I am a much better man for having met her and shared in her struggle. I love you and miss you so much. My mom had intimacy on my bed. I 16M and my 12F sister were just casually talking today and she decided to tell me about how my mom and her ex-boyfriend had intimacy on my bed while I was gone about 2 years ago. I used to go back and forth between my mom and dad's before I fully moved to my mom so I would be gone a lot. I have a small twin-sized bed that I could barely have intimacy on. My mom has a queen-sized bed. So I just can't wrap my head around why they would do that. My room is full of me, I put posters up, I have trinkets all over, just everything I like plastered on my walls showing people what kind of person I am the second they walk in my room so I'm so effing utterly disturbed and confused as to why my mom would do that. I brought it up with her the second I found out about it and her only response was that it was 2 years ago and then she started yelling at me to keep my space clean. But my thing is 2 years doesn't make a difference when you're a grown adult. My mom would use her addiction as an excuse for things she did in the past but she was no more an addict than she is now. I don't know what to do. I can't effing live with myself knowing my mom was in my bed surrounded by objects that would remind her of me while having intimacy. Plus whose idea was it? The random man she had in the house or herself? Either way I'm in fucking tears cause how could a parent do that? I was about to propose to my crush of 10 years until her best friend revealed the truth. I've had a major crush on my girlfriend since our school days. We were in the same school, though she was a class ahead of me. My crush was widely known, making any interaction with her the subject of teasing from friends. Despite this, I never mustered the courage to ask her out. After school, we went our separate ways for education, and we weren't even Facebook friends. About 3.5 years ago, at a friend's birthday celebration, I saw her again. She had become even more gorgeous and badass. The friend hosting the birthday was a mutual acquaintance from school, and he knew about my crush. Encouraged by friends, I approached her, and we had a nice talk. We exchanged numbers and social media. With some detective work, I found out she was single. I reached out, expecting rejection, but to my surprise, she agreed to hang out. As we spent time together, we discovered many common interests, eventually becoming a couple. Our relationship has been fulfilling, and we've discussed marriage. Recently, we hosted her best friend and husband for dinner. After some drinks, her best friend revealed that my girlfriend initially agreed to date me out of pity. She intended to have a sad date and then let me down gently. However, things took a positive turn, and now we're discussing our future together. My girlfriend admitted this was true, and it's bothering me despite my reassurances to her. I'm on the verge of self-sabotaging this wonderful relationship. Please knock some sense into me. Would I be the jerk if I break up with my fiancé because of his past as cheater? I, 25, met my fiancé, Jamie, 34, a year ago through a friend. We instantly clicked and started dating. After 1 year he proposed to me and I said yes. But here is the thing. Before proposing he told me the truth about his past relationship. He was married to a woman, Cynthia, 3 years ago and they divorced because he started cheating on her with a coworker. He regrets ever doing that. He has been on a healing journey from that. He has told me that the affair was a mistake and that he would never do it again. He just wants to be honest with me before we take this relationship to the next level. I understand what he meant. He is obviously remorseful and I have seen his ex-wife. She seems happier with someone else. And everyone makes mistakes or take decisions that they regret. I trust him and love him a lot. But I can't shake off this feeling that he would not do this to me. This started when he was being secretive about his phone. He would smile at the screen often. I asked him what it is. He just showed me his phone and he was looking at a meme. He probably sensed that I was doubting him. So he let me check his phone. There was nothing in there. But still I couldn't trust him. Few days after our engagement he had a work party. He took me to that party as well. I saw that he was being a bit friendly to some woman. I went there and introduced myself. Later I got to know she was the same girl he cheated with. I confronted him about it. He said that he doesn't talk to her. They broke up shortly after their divorce, and he cannot avoid her because he worked with her. I told him I am not comfortable with him hanging out with someone who is his mistress. He respected my decision, and as far as I know he has not contacted her outside of work. I know I have no reason to doubt him. He doesn't give off any signs of infidelity, yet I have a hard time trusting him. He is loving and caring. He supports me in my dreams. He is patient and kind. I know it is unfair of me to judge him based on just that. Few weeks ago, a friend of mine asked me to meet her, and she told me the whole truth about Jamie. She knows Cynthia because she and her brother were college friends. She told me to be careful of Jamie because he cheated on his ex-wife. I told her I already know that. She further told me he started cheating on Cynthia right after she had a miscarriage. He was upset that Cynthia was depressed and he started to feel neglected. After talking to my friend, I confronted Jamie. He told me this was the truth. He was still in grief because he lost his child. He didn't know what he was thinking. He started to feel resentful towards her, but he never meant to hurt her. I asked him that I need a break from all of this. It is just too much for me. He said he understands, and I still haven't talked to him. I don't know if I should break up with him just because of this. He does feel guilty about it, but he is really nice and mature. Will I be making a mistake if I break up with him? I think I should mention that he never said anything about a miscarriage. He just told me they had a tragic accident which made both of them distant. I didn't ask because he said he doesn't want to talk about it. Also, I am still not fully sure if he regrets the cheating because he never confessed to cheating to his wife. His wife caught him in the middle of the act inside their house. So, this has been a bother that he got caught and probably feels guilty for that. I don't know. Is life better without children? I lived life for 34 years before having children, so I think I have an impartial opinion about how things were before and after having children. Both are fine decisions either way, it just depends on your wants and needs. Living as an adult without kids allows you to save a lot more money. You have lots more time. You can do as you please. You have less worry. You have lots more sleep. You can travel easily. You don't need to find childcare when you have to work or study or go out for a movie. You don't need to be as responsible, and there isn't an 18+ year commitment to providing for a dependent. If these are more significantly important to you than having a family, then it is a good decision for you to not have children. I think people should not have children unless they really want them. Because it is a lot of work and a long journey, and it takes a lot to be a good parent. Life is easier without children, but personally, I wouldn't say better without children. However, I wanted children. For many years, I lived with the fact that I was not going to have a child. My ex-husband did not want kids, and it was always his way or the highway. Plus, he was a cheater, abusive and controlling, and I was deeply afraid that if we ever accidentally had children, they would be subjected to worse treatment than I. That was a scary thought. Indeed, without kids, for years I was able to save lots more money, travel at any time, work around the clock, and had time to spare. It wasn't a good life though, as you've read in my past answers, and leaving was the best decision of my life. Fast forward a few years, and now I have a beautiful family with a loving husband and delightful preschooler. I had my child later in life than most. Having a child is an experience like no other and cannot be understood unless you've gone through the ordeal. No one can speak on behalf of a parent about the experience of kids unless they are a parent themselves. I think life is more fulfilling with children. It's a whole other dimension that I did not experience while childless. The love that you have for your child is really on another level. The happiness they bring at each stage of their lives, from newborn to infant to toddler to preschool so far, it's been truly wonderful. Their smiles, laughs, little phrases, conversations, it's priceless. I have so many photos and videos on my phone that I replay over and over that make me smile. My son is a handful, and he has a burst of energy from the moment he wakes up until he sleeps. He's always running, talking, laughing, jumping, and he's exhausting, but he's such a joy to my life. Don't get me wrong, he is a lot of work, he's expensive, I worry about him, I get a lot less sleep, I have to think twice about travel plans, trying to do well in school while having kids is very difficult, and childcare is expensive. But I've never regretted one bit of having him. I'm so thankful I got to experience this part of life that I wanted for so long. Am I the a-hole for refusing to give my cousin my heated blanket when I got home? So, I have an 8-year-old cousin, who we'll call Katie for the sake of the story. For my 16th birthday, my best friend Jasper gave me a heated blanket because I mentioned how my room can freeze whenever it wants. It is basically a red blanket that plugs in, you pick one of 4 settings and it auto shuts off after 3 hours, so it's not a fire hazard. Safe to say, I love this thing. I'm actually using it right now lol. So 2 days ago, my aunt and uncle and Katie came over for dinner. I asked Katie if she wanted to play a game on our Switch. She excitedly said yes, so we went up to my room and set it up to my TV. Just my luck, my room was freezing cold, so I set up my heated blanket for Katie and I while my heater slowly heats up the room. When they were about to leave, Katie came running to me with the blanket, asking if she could take it home. The thing is, they have 2 dogs who ruin stuff in 2 seconds, while she doesn't take the best care of her stuff either, understandable since she's 8. I took it nicely from her and said no in the nicest way possible. I told her that it was a birthday gift that Jasper gave to me. She looked disappointed but smiled. She's met Jasper, and aside from her parents and I, he's got to be her favorite person, and he absolutely adores her. She's told Jasper and I that we need to get together and get married so that she can see him more often lol. She ran to her parents and got her stuff on, and my aunt and uncle asked why I couldn't just give it to her. I said again that it was a birthday gift from Jasper. They just said that I could have given it to her and Jasper or I could get another one. I don't want to give it away since it was a birthday gift from my best friend, and he had a hilariously hard time getting it. He paid for it, but he had to ask his mother to order it, and tried his best to not mention that it was a gift for a girl, since you can probably tell how. She'd respond lol. I stood my ground and told them that I would not be giving it to them, and they just huffed and left. Later they texted me saying that I was an and I should have just given it to her. I was older, and I should have been the bigger person. The thing is, Katie had literally no problem with me saying no, so I have no idea what their problem was, but the way I was thrown around it reminded me of this place.
My shameless husband left me alone on our flight during our honeymoon to be in the business class seat, so I ignored all his texts saying he feels anxiety over flying. I recently married my husband and we took a 3-hour flight to Mexico for our honeymoon. I fly a lot for my job, so I have racked up a lot of miles. My husband isn't a big fan of flying, though he has gotten better and tends to just hold my hand and close his eyes during takeoff and landing. When I booked our flights, I requested to use my points if an upgrade to business class became available, but made it clear I only wanted this upgrade if 2 seats became available and then basically forgot about it. Then comes the day of our flight. I was so excited about this trip. I checked in online, and all was going well, and then when we went to board, the person scanning out boarding passes stopped us. She says it seems that my husband was upgraded to business class, but only him, and asks if that is okay. I immediately said no. We are on our honeymoon and would like to stay together. But then my husband jumps in and says, no, it's fine, I'll go to business class. I look at him in complete shock and he tells me that I fly all the time and have been in business class before, but he hasn't, so he deserves a chance to experience it. I see we are holding up the line, so I feel like I just need to agree and get on the plane. To say I am pissed off is an understatement. He is all smiles, taking his seat, and I go back to my seat where they sit me next to an old woman with a baby on her lap where my husband should be sitting. Within maybe 5 to 10 minutes of sitting there, trying to hold back tears because my husband left me alone on our flight during our honeymoon, and uses my points for his upgrade no less, he starts to text me saying he feels anxiety over flying. I ignore the text and stop looking at my phone. Within maybe an hour after we are in the air, he comes to the back of the plane to find me, offers me half of his business class breakfast, and asks me why I was ignoring him, that he was scared and needed me to tell him it'd be okay since I am such an experienced flyer. I told him maybe he should have thought about that before leaving me alone before our honeymoon even really began. He gets angry and tells me that this may be the only time he gets to fly business class and he was giving me half his breakfast to make up for it so I could at least be supportive of his genuine fear. I roll my eyes, and sarcastically say thanks, and he goes back up to his seat. When we landed, I tried to just move on and forget about it so that we could just enjoy our honeymoon, but he guilt-tripped me about not comforting him via text before takeoff, and now I am wondering if I am being unreasonable and should have just let him enjoy his time in business class and ensure him it'd be okay. So am I the a-hole? My professor kissed me. This summer, I've been working at an academic summer camp on a different campus, and one of my school professors, John, who's 67, also lives here year-round. He just flies to the city where he teaches every week. I ran into him in town last week and he said if I had a day off we should get together for dinner. I immediately accepted. I've had dinner alone with John twice before, as he always takes out the recently graduated students one-on-one. As first years, my female friends and I initially found his invitation strange, but we ultimately decided he was harmless. We'd all been out with him alone and nothing strange had ever happened. So, a few nights ago we had dinner. He asked a few questions about my summer but mostly talked about himself. He's always been this way, a bit self-obsessed and so garrulous it's hard to get a word in during conversation. We mostly talked about the grad program and our respective summer travels abroad. Innocent conversation, nothing weird. When we left, we walked down the sidewalk together until we had to go in different directions. I thanked him for dinner, moved to turn around, and he surprised me by pulling me into a hug and giving me a long, loud kiss on my lips. I began to feel kind of grossed out a few minutes later. I'm not especially close to this professor. I had 2 classes with him and that's it. I tried to imagine the scenario with different people, with one of my other male professors or with me and one of my male students, and it seemed to me that what happened was wildly inappropriate. John has never done anything like that in the city where our university is, not to me or any of the girls in my cohort, so I feel like being far away made him bold. He knew no one else was around and he could get away with crossing some boundaries. Edit, I reported it and there is an investigation going on. Edit 2, I heard back from my office the other day, and they said they're shutting down the investigation because they talked to my professor, and he said he intended the kiss to be friendly rather than intimate. As if that actually matters. The fact is, regardless of intent, he did something no normal person would do to a student or coworker 40 years younger than him, and he's getting away with it. I politely explained to the office that I thought their decision was ridiculous, and in the same email I asked if the no-contact order between my professor and me still stands. Apparently, it doesn't, and the office completely ignored the other part of my email. I guess I expected at least a half-hearted investigation or a light slap on the wrist, something to keep up the pretense that my fancy effing school gives a crap about its students. Now I get to spend the next year either avoiding this guy at department events or making extremely uncomfortable small talk.
Am I the a-hole for telling one of my daughter's classmates' moms to F off about what I put in my daughter's lunch? No names in this story are real. For some context before the story, I, 38, cook Asian foods regularly for dinner and for my daughter, Lily's, 7, lunches at school. This is because my family enjoys these foods, I like to cook these foods, and my mom cooked a bunch of these foods growing up since she's half Japanese. Oftentimes I'll either give my daughter some leftovers from last night's dinner, plus a fruit/veggie and a snack, or I'll make her a quick little bento box or some other thing really quick. So, after school one day, my daughter wanted to play on the playground for a bit before we went home. I said she could play for a few minutes, and she ran off to play. I was waiting next to this other parent, who we'll call Deborah. While I was waiting, Deborah came up to me. Deborah, are you Lily's mother? Me, oh, yeah, I am, why? Deborah, well, your daughter's lunches have been bothering my son, and I would like to ask you to pack something else. Me, what? How are they bothering him? She then proceeded to start talking about how her son was complaining about my daughter's lunches smelling terrible, and that he thought it was disgusting. She also said her son didn't eat most of his lunch because he was so grossed out. Me, okay, I understand your son doesn't like the smell, but can't he just sit somewhere else? Deborah, are you kidding me? My son shouldn't have to put up with whatever crap you make your daughter bring to the school. It's disgusting. And she started making more vaguely racist complaints, but I was fed up at this point. Me, listen, I understand your son might not like my daughter's food, but he can very easily just not sit next to her. I'm not changing what's in my daughter's lunches because you and your kid don't want to exist near Asian food. F off. She angrily stomped off with her kid then, and my daughter finished playing soon after, so we went home. I talked to my husband about it, and he said that maybe I shouldn't have told her to F off, to avoid her bothering us in the future. Am I the a-hole? My gross boyfriend doesn't shower. We've been together for about a year now, and after a few months, I noticed something kinda weird. Sometimes he'd wear the same underwear for more than one day. It bothered me, but I didn't know how to bring it up. Eventually, I just asked him about it. He said he'd done laundry that day, so I let it go. But it kept happening. So, I decided to ask him about how often he showers, and he told me it's every other day. The next time I mentioned it, he got really mad, thinking I was calling him dirty. I didn't want to argue, so I dropped it. Now it's been a whole year, and nothing has changed. It's just a huge turnoff for me. We'll be getting intimate, and all I can think about is, did he wear those boxers yesterday? When was the last time he showered? Sometimes he stays over at my place, and I stay over at his, but I've never seen him shower unless I remind him to. In the beginning, he just wouldn't shower when I slept over. I couldn't help but notice that he wears the same clothes and underwear again and again. I texted him about it recently because it's been bothering me, and I've been overthinking it. But his response was that now he feels bad about himself, and he's kinda ignoring me. I'm starting to think maybe I was too picky, and I shouldn't have brought it up. I really don't want to buy him more underwear, shower with him, or remind him to shower. He's an adult, and I think he should take responsibility for this. I saw him today, and he was wearing the same underwear as yesterday and Monday, which was the last time I saw him and had reminded him to shower. Writing it down makes it sound worse, but that's how it is. Final update, refusing to take my brother to school after he made jokes about one of his classmates. So my update was denied, so it's being posted on my page instead. I apologize for the late update, but here you are, and I added dates so there isn't any confusion. So, as I said, I was no longer taking my brother to school and my parents couldn't find anyone else to take him, so he had to take the bus. Someone mentioned why not Uber or Lyft, and that's because my parents don't trust either. Thing is, he was off the hook the first 3 days, October 27th to 29th, which is why y'all didn't get an update that weekend, because my mom let him stay home the first day, then one of his friends was taking him, which stopped because he was grounded as he was one of the bullies. Then, the next Monday to Thursday, November 1st to 4th, he had to get the bus. Monday, November 1st, he still took me as a joke, woke me up, and told me to take him to school. I said no, and that's when it hit that I was dead serious. I gave him $1 and told him to take the bus. And as some of you guessed, he hated it, and according to my mom, I made him have a panic attack because he had to take public transportation. Anyways, yada yada, he missed the bus and was late to school. The other day, he took the bus and I didn't hear anything about him being bullied for it, to those of you who claim I was making him take the bus to get bullied. Friday, my mom let him stay home again because, you guessed it, he didn't want to take the bus. So, he only took it those 4 days. And for those of you who think I stopped taking him as an easy way out, literally pisses me off because that is not the case. It's not hard to see why I stopped taking him. You guys are reaching. As for the bullying situation goes, I don't know if every kid has the same punishment, but surprisingly the school made my brother apologize to the kid, gave him lunch detention, and what I do know, he and everyone involved has to pick up trash for 20 minutes every day after school and on Saturdays, w/parents permission, for 3 weeks. Any kid who posted/reposted the video got in trouble as well. The girl who I saw posted the video, deleted it. I want to add about the bullied kid. I contacted his mom, told her about my brother being one of the kids who bullied her son, and apologized on my brother's behalf. But someone who lives nearby was willing to take him to school, so I'm sorry to those of you who were looking forward to me taking him, but I wouldn't have been able to anyway because they live too far away. Also, my parents still believe it's something a teen boy would do. But my dad admitted after seeing the video, regardless of how much or how little my brother participated, he was in the wrong. That's the only reason my brother is picking up trash, because my dad signed off on it since my mom wouldn't. Have you ever rebelled against an unfair school policy for the sake of a student? I wanted to share a really powerful story from my time as a teacher. Last week, one of my students lost her mom and was out of school for 4 days. According to the school's policy, She had to make up all the work she missed when she got back. I offered her a couple hours on Thursday or Friday so she could come in and work with me, but they were insisting that she do it all at once. F that. I refused to be absent while they enforced this bullshit policy. The next day, when I walked into class, my students had printed out a petition asking me to stay during their test because they needed my help. It was really sweet of them, but ultimately it wasn't their decision to make. After class, one student stayed behind and said he understood why I wanted to help his friend and asked if there was anything he could do about it. His empathy blew me away. He's such an amazing student. We talked about different options and then he emailed the principal with some ideas backed up by another teacher who works closely with him. Later that day I got called into the principal's office along with the supportive teacher we talked about earlier. We discussed how we could support this student while still doing our jobs as educators properly, which is what we're supposed to do after all. The principal, who also has a lot of respect for this kid, suggested letting him make up his missed work over winter break so he'd have plenty of time before finals started again in January. After careful consideration and discussion, we agreed that seemed like the best option for everyone involved here. Fair enough, right? This story just goes to show how much power understanding, collaboration and compassion can have in an educational setting, even if it's coming from students instead of teachers or administrators. Has a child ever come up to you alone and asked for help? How did you react, and what did you do? My friend Bill was driving in a rural area in the winter in New England, doing errands. He was shocked to see a little girl by the side of the road wearing only a dress, no coat or shoes. She was 5 years old, maybe. Bill stopped the car and asked the little girl where she lived. She pointed in the direction, so Bill put her in the car and drove to a house a quarter of a mile down the road. Note, in hindsight, he realized how greatly wrong putting the little girl in the car with him could have been. But this is not that story. The little girl's mother, a single parent, was frantic as she realized her daughter was missing and was overcome with relief. She told Bill that her daughter had managed to get out of the rental house because the front door wouldn't latch properly. She had tried tying the door shut, tape, you name it. The mother had told her landlord about the problem, and while he had promised to make the repair, it had been over 2 months without any action. Bill drove to a hardware store, with smoke coming out of his ears. He was seething. He bought a new lock set and whatever other tools he needed to install the lock that he didn't have handy. He returned, installed the lock, refused to accept any money from the grateful mother and drove off to complete the rest of his errands and ended up telling me the story not too long after. Am I the a-hole for only paying for a portion of my son's college even though we had money from his dead brother's college fund?
I, F58, will always be a mother to my twin sons, Thomas and Sam.
In the summer after they graduated, when they were 18, Thomas passed away. I can't begin to explain how broken I was. At that point, Sam had already accepted an offer to go to an Ivy League school. My husband and I had about $100K each saved up for the boys, but Sam's school was so expensive that the money wouldn't cover it. Before Thomas passed, Sam was fine with taking out student loans to cover the rest. Then we lost Thomas. Less than 2 months after it happened, Sam asked if he could have the $100K that was set aside for Thomas. I lost it on him. I told him that it was Thomas's money and not his, and it deserved to go to Thomas. This is where I might have been because Sam could have used that money. But he didn't get a cent of it. To be fair, my husband and I didn't get a cent of it either. We donated it all to various charities against drunk driving in memory of Thomas. That was all about 10 years ago. Sam took out student loans, but he's so young and already a very successful lawyer. I believe he's paid most of the loans off by now, possibly all? If it matters at all, my husband and I contributed a significant amount, about $50K, to his law school tuition as well. I thought we were past it, but the other day, Sam brought up how unfair it was for me to refuse to give him Thomas's money. We had a tearful argument over it, and now I just don't know what to think. If I could do it again, I still don't think I would give that money to Sam. Does that make me an My selfish girlfriend gave me an ultimatum to get rid of my dead wife's stuff or else she's leaving. I think she's being unfair. I spent 6 wonderful years with my high school sweetheart before she died in a motorcycle accident. Her death broke me and left me depressed. It was very hard to get over her and I had to go to therapy for a long time. 4 years later, I got back on my feet and I met my current girlfriend at a work event. She made me ready to date again because I really wanted to be emotionally available for her. I liked her a lot and I was looking forward to being with her for many years to come. I was incredibly vulnerable with her to the point where I talked extensively about my deceased wife as well as the mental health issues it brought to me, and she has been nothing but supportive and loving. Recently, we moved in and this is where the problem began. I have a small chest that I use to keep under my bed that has a few things that belong to my deceased wife along with some photos of the two of us. My girlfriend saw it and asked about it, so I explained what it was and showed her the contents. I didn't really expect it to be a big deal, but since I showed her, things have never been worse for us. She's been really moody, hasn't slept in bed with me, and hasn't been affectionate at all. When I finally asked her what was wrong, she explained that because I still had the chest and wanted to keep it, it was an indication to her that I hadn't moved on from my deceased wife, and that she doesn't think she can continue the relationship unless I get rid of it. I proposed keeping it more tucked away, not in our bedroom, or at another person's home, and she continued to say I was still hanging on to her, so I'm not ready for a relationship in her eyes, and keeping it somewhere else didn't change that. I was shocked to say the least, and let her know I needed some time to think about it. Honestly, I thought that was an unfair ultimatum from her because she knows just how much my late wife meant to me, and I'm allowed to grieve however I can. My late wife had been with me through some really tough times and she has never been an awful person. My girlfriend seemed to understand all of this before seeing the chest. It's been 2 weeks since that happened and my girlfriend has been asking me daily when I plan to get rid of it because she can't live in the same space as the chest. Getting rid of the chest means my late wife is really gone and it feels like she was never here in the first place. It's like getting rid of her entirely. I have some of my best memories stored in that chest and those pictures are the only way I'll ever be able to see her again. I'm scared that if I get rid of the chest, the years will fly by and I'll eventually forget what she looks like. But my girlfriend has been so amazing to me, up until this point. She's the one that made me want to get better and fully move on from my wife's death. I think that shows my commitment to her. I sat her down last night to have an open conversation with her and asked why the chest was so significant that she had to give me an ultimatum. She confessed that throughout our entire relationship, she's always felt like she had to match up to the standards of my late wife, or be even better so that I would stay with her, so me still having the chest was the confirmation that she will always be lesser than. If I got rid of the chest, it would be confirmation that I was ready to give my whole heart to her. This broke my heart. I couldn't believe she never told me she was feeling this way and that I didn't see it. It also made me feel confused because I've been trying to show her the best I can that I can give her my heart in other ways. Why do I need to dump these precious memories to do that? I told her that the relationship with my late wife and my relationship with her are entirely independent of one another, and that I was focused on building trust and love with her, not trying to replace my late wife or compare her by any means. I was firm on not getting rid of the chest because it meant a lot to me sentimentally, but I reassured her that I wasn't keeping it to hang on or cling to my late wife. I just felt as though it was an important part of my history and I wanted to honor her memory. Some of the trinkets in the chest were from when we were 16 years old, going to high school dances and learning how to drive together. I couldn't simply trash those. I tried my best to let her know I loved her for exactly who she was, not the position she held in my life or how similar she was to my late wife. I was sure I wanted to build a life together with her, but even that wasn't enough to get her to understand my point of view. She packed a bag that same night and drove off to stay at a friend's house. She's making arrangements to move out next week. I'm still in shock, but I mostly feel confused and hollow. Maybe I truly wasn't ready for a relationship after all. What's the lowest spice tolerance you've seen in someone? Honestly, myself once upon a time, I was a Nando's lemon and herb kind of person, and if you put even the slightest hint of chili in my food, I was dead. I grew up in a very British kind of food household, where meat and 3 vegetables was the norm. The concept of spice, not just of the hot variety, but any spice, was pretty unusual. In 2016, I met my soon-to-be wife, who is from mainland China. Given her ethnicity, she obviously has a good spice tolerance, to say the least. And since we're both more into veggies than meat, you've got to do something with those veggies to make them taste nice. So, we cook with a lot of spice, often things chili, peppercorns and cumin. It took time, but after 6 years living together, let me tell you, I can eat spicy food like a mainland China person myself now. In fact, if my food doesn't have spice these days, I find it pretty uninteresting. Sometimes I even find myself outdoing my fiancée, and she'll be reaching for her drink while I'm reaching for more food. So the point is, you can better your spice tolerance. It takes time, but don't think of it as some torturous process you need to undergo for no reason at all other than bragging rights. If you don't have at least a reasonable spice tolerance, then you'll be missing out on a lot of tasty food. So I think it's worthwhile to at least push your boundaries slowly, but consistently, because the tolerance can leave faster than it was gained, and enjoy the discovery of a whole new world of food along the way.
What is the darkest thing you have ever done and don't regret? When I was 13, my very abusive and extremely drunken father was swinging at my dog trying to punch him. I pushed him down a flight of stairs, breaking every rib on his left side and punctured a lung. Then I went right back to watching Dukes of Hazzard. About 5 hours later, my mom came home. She asks where Dad was. I told her he was laying on the basement floor. Why? He's drunk. Of course, he must have fell. She went down there and screamed at him for about 20 minutes, but he was mostly unconscious. Then she called my uncle to come and help me carry him upstairs. My dog wouldn't let my uncle anywhere near the old man despite their earlier altercation, so I had to carry him up by myself. I was a big kid. Anyone with even a tiny bit of first aid knowledge, me, from Scouts, would know not to do that. I had to sling him in a blanket over my shoulder Santa Claus style. He then spent the next 4 days getting sober enough, not sober, to go to the hospital. There he was properly diagnosed and treated and his lung drained and reinflated, while he was able to smoke. Yep, smoke right there in his hospital bed. They did not provide alcohol on the hospital menu, so he went into withdrawal. Delirium tremors and all. Kept screaming, "Get that goddamn horse off of my bed." How did that horse get in here? That lasted about a week. Then, and I don't know how this works, the doctors refused to release him from the hospital and moved him to the psych ward. He spent 2 months or so in there being treated for addiction. During that time no children, dogs or wives were physically, mentally or emotionally abused at our house. Not once. For the first time in about 30 years. Eventually he was discharged and much to everyone's shock and utter disbelief, he never drank again. Or hurt his wife. Or abused his children. His grandchildren absolutely worshipped him and competed for his favor. He was kind and generous and a great source of wisdom and humor for them. In time, they named their own sons after him and have his name tattooed on their flesh. Ultimately he died of cancer, and when he did, I held him in my arms and looked him in the eyes so he wouldn't be scared or die alone. I was his primary caregiver for the last 7 years of his life, and I have zero regrets about my actions that day.
I regret not making my marriage work, and now my ex-husband is happily remarried. When I was in my early 30s, I made the decision to divorce my husband. Looking back, it feels like a dream. We were young, in love, and everything was going well. We didn't have any significant arguments or monumental issues tearing us apart. The challenges came after having our son, and that's when things started to unravel. Being a stay-at-home mom, I took pride in raising our child, but I also expected more from my husband. I wanted him to be involved in housework and childcare. Even though he worked full-time, he was always willing to help, and I can't fault him for that. But over time, I began to demand more and more from him, and I could see the light in his eyes starting to fade. I used to have him wrapped around my finger. I knew exactly how to manipulate situations to get what I wanted, and I took advantage of that power. But eventually he grew tired of it, and the threats of divorce that were once idle became all too real. I remember the day I told him I wanted a divorce. He looked at me, pain in his eyes, saying he knew the baby was just stressing us out and that he wanted to make it work. But at that moment, at age 30, I felt invincible. I had lost the weight I gained during pregnancy, and I still felt beautiful. I believed I could do better than him. So I left him, taking our house in the divorce and sharing joint custody of our son. Fast forward to today. I'm 41, still single, and my ex-husband is 41 and happily remarried to a stunning 31-year-old woman. They had their daughter 3 years ago, and every time I see them together, my heart aches. He's bought a new house, and my son loves spending time with his other family. It makes me jealous. I keep thinking she has it all. She took my husband and my kid and even the life I once had. Now all I have is our old house, filled with memories of what used to be. At 41, life looks different. I gained 20 pounds. Wrinkles have made their mark, and loneliness is my constant companion. I tried to date, but short-term relationships never turned into anything more. Men just don't seem to want a woman like me, especially when with a child. It bothers me to see how easily men with children find love. I'm not happy anymore. I wish I could go back to when I was younger and change what I did. But now all I have is regret for the choices I made over 10 years ago. I work a job that feels meaningless now, sharing custody of my son, watching him go off to spend time at my ex-husband's house with his new beautiful wife next to her. I feel worthless, like something thrown away. My therapist has been trying to help, encouraging me to find happiness in little things, like a makeover. I tried getting a new hairstyle, but every glance in the mirror reminds me that no matter what I do, I still look like a middle-aged woman. I just feel broken. I wish I had been a better wife all those years ago. I know many people preach the advantages of being alone and single, but honestly, this is not the life I would wish on my worst enemy.
My surrogate decided to change her mind and we fought over the baby. I find myself in a difficult situation with my surrogate, Maria, 25F, and I'm wondering if I'm the jerk in this situation. To provide some context, my husband, Roman, and I decided to use surrogacy to have a child. We had a legal agreement in place, and Maria was compensated generously for her part in carrying our baby. Everything was going smoothly, and we were excited about our child's arrival. However, around the 8th month of pregnancy, Maria dropped a bombshell. She declared that she no longer wanted to go through with the surrogacy and expressed her desire to keep the child. This sent Roman into a fit of anger, but I managed to get him to step out, and I had a one-on-one conversation with Maria. I reminded her that she had legally signed the documents, and the baby was unequivocally ours, mine, and Roman's. She began pleading with me, but I stood my ground, asserting that this child was my son and not hers. She tried to bargain, saying she no longer wanted the money, but I firmly rejected her request, emphasizing that no one had coerced her into signing those papers. Whether she liked it or not, the baby was ours. To add some financial weight to my argument, I highlighted all the money we had invested in the baby and the substantial amount she received before the pregnancy. I clarified that if she wanted the baby, she'd have to reimburse us for all that, something I knew she couldn't afford. I suggested that if she had any more issues, she should speak to my lawyers, but as far as I was concerned, the baby was ours, mine, and Roman's. Whether she liked it or not. Maria called us cruel and even involved her family to support her case. Now, I'm doubting whether I'm in the wrong here. Roman supports my stance, but some of my friends and her family are calling me the asshole. So, TikTok, am I in the wrong in this situation?
My mother just confirmed that she intentionally broke up me and my ex. My ex-boyfriend and I were together for just over 3 years. We broke up because our parents, my mother, his father, got engaged. They pulled a lot of crap, but I'm going to try and condense it. They spent months referring to us as siblings and introducing us to people as our children, and constantly joking about us as though we were full-blood relatives when there's not even a distant relation. When they got engaged, there came even more comments about how we were going to be a regular nuclear family, with a married couple and their children, and mom telling me I should think of my ex and his sister as my siblings. A bit before the breakup, I had a pregnancy scare. I told my mom, who said it was good I wasn't pregnant because how will you explain to the grandbabies that you have the same parents? They got engaged and had an engagement party where my ex wasn't in attendance, but I was. At the party, my mother gave a speech and said, "Thanks to our children, ex and op, for helping create this wonderful little family unit of ours. Aside from your incest." I then had to deal with that for the rest of the party and ex, and I wound up breaking up within a week because now our entire extended family and family friends were joking about it. The wedding was on Valentine's Day. We hadn't spoken since the breakup, but ex contacted me and asked how I wanted to handle it, and we agreed either we both go or neither of us go. We both flip-flopped back and forth on if we were going or not, but ultimately agreed to go because it would look worse if we didn't go at all, and we were both asked to be in the wedding party. It went about the same as any other wedding would go, right up until the DJ said that our parents wanted to dedicate a song to their children. And then he played Sweet Home Alabama. Cue laughter. Me and ex left after that, but my mom followed. She said it was just a joke, we didn't need to get all huffy about it, and begged us to come back inside. We refused and stood outside while we waited for the next bus. Then we got to talking and long story short we agreed to pick up where we left off, as we'd been apart a few months but all the feelings were still there. We'd not had any other relationships in this time, and he even still had stuff at my place. We agreed that it was stupid of us to let other people dictate our relationship and also agreed to severely limit contact with our parents this time around. Not full no contact, but very very low contact. We've also booked some sessions with a couples counselor starting Sunday. Today my mom asked me to meet her for coffee, and I went, thinking that this would be a perfect time to tell her we're back together, talk about boundaries and initiate the very very low contact my boyfriend and I had agreed on. However, I ran through the rain to get there and didn't think to touch up the concealer I'd put on the hickey my boyfriend left on my neck last night. Mom immediately sees it and asks where it's from. I was about 2 seconds away from George glassing her but then she says it's from your brother, isn't it? I then snap he's not my brother. She now knows everything she needs to know and basically says that she's been married less than a week and I'm already trying to ruin it. I got a bit upset and responded that she essentially ruined my relationship of 3 years in favor of her relationship of less than 18 months and we've only just started rebuilding what they ruined. She then says clearly we didn't do a good enough job if you're already mending it. I directly asked if she was trying to break us up. She admitted that she and my new stepdad had entered into their relationship with the sole intention of ending ours because we said once, in passing, that we had been looking at houses a bit under an hour away so we could have a garden for future kids, and they didn't want to have to drive a 2-hour round trip to see us. When they realized they actually liked each other / wanted to get married, they then became even more committed to ending our relationship because they'd rather we were heartbroken than let their friends and family think that they were odd. So this whole thing started as a way to make sure we didn't move an hour away from them and now it's them trying to make sure their friends and family don't think they're weird. My mom left an hour ago. My boyfriend is at work right now, phone off, totally oblivious. I am still at the coffee place writing this in a state of shock. What do I do with this information? I know I need to tell my boyfriend when he gets off work but how do we approach either parent going forward, or begin to deal with this whole thing?
I'm a 28-year-old man who made an OnlyFans showing off my feet and pretending to be a woman. I'm a pretty small dude and my feet are size 9 so when I wax them, lotion them and paint my nails my feet look very feminine. I take pictures and video of them in different scenarios and situations doing different things trying to be vague so people don't figure out I'm not a girl. I actually have a decent following and have been making a good amount of money so far but obviously the money would stop if people figured out these.
What's your most wholesome secret? When I was a kid I used to always twist the quarter machines on the way into stores just in case. Got lucky a couple of times and a few free toys. Now that I'm grown if I'm leaving a store with them I like to drop change into them if I have it and leave them half twisted. I secretly drop pennies. For many years, my uncle used to bend down and pick up every penny he came across, which was maddening to my aunt who was worried the neighbors would see him and assume they were poor, needing every penny they could find. They used to tease each other about it. My uncle got cancer and passed away after a very long struggle. After the funeral we were walking to the car and my aunt saw a penny and said, "Oh, John is thinking of me, he left this penny for me today." So whenever I am around my aunt, I purposely drop pennies on the ground for her to find. I haven't been caught yet and I hope I never do. My almost 16-year-old thinks he's saving for a car. He's actually saved about $11,000. He doesn't know I'm going to buy him a car and he can use that money for something else. I'm taking my daughters to McDonald's and the movies after school today. They have no idea. They think we're going home to do spring cleaning, which I already did. I can hardly contain myself. I'm so excited.
Teachers of Reddit, how easy it to tell if a student has a crush on another high school teacher. Depending on the kids' personalities, they either get louder or quieter when their crushes are present. The loud ones are freaking annoying. The quiet ones are the ones I would purposefully sit next to their crushes. Haha. My son who is 5 has a crush on a 6-year-old at his school. She says she loves him too and she is around him all the time. He told me just yesterday that he wants to build a 3-bedroom house with a room for him, a room for her and a room for the baby they are going to have. I asked if he did not want to share a bedroom with her and he said a boy needs his space. I have this one teacher that will totally just say anything that's on her mind. Once she just flat out said, "Do you guys like each other or what?" to these 2 kids in my class. Within 3 days they were dating and still are. Teenagers are not subtle by nature, but they are amazingly oblivious when it comes to matters of the heart. They are really perceptive with other things, though. The boys almost never recognize if a girl likes them, and the girls never realize a guy is showing interest. It's funny to watch it happen. It's so blatantly obvious as an outsider, but I remember being just as oblivious as a student.
I taught my liberal son a lesson, and now he's trying to ruin my marriage. I love my teenage son, but I would be lying if I said I wasn't disappointed in the type of man he has been growing up to be. My son started developing a very liberal mindset ever since he started hanging out with his weird friends and spending all his time. It started off in his junior year when he dropped being the captain of the football team to do volleyball. From there he got a completely different friend group and started doing a lot of TikTok dances. Personally I wasn't a fan and thought it was super weird. He also started dressing really baggy, and although at first I thought he was just bulking up, it turns out he just got a very feminine style. My wife and his older sister are very supportive, and I find him spending a lot more time with them than me. I've never confronted my son about his sexuality, and I really just don't want to know if he does happen to be gay. Our relationship is already sort of strained, and I feel like if I found out he wasn't straight, it would make it very hard for me to treat him the same. Like I said, I don't have a problem with gay people, I just don't want to be shoved in my face. Recently my son also hasn't been wanting to go on our usual hunting trips in our favorite forest or shoot some hoops with me. All he wants to do is stay on his stupid phone all day. I've had many confrontations with him recently, but I don't think he takes me seriously or even understands my concerns. That's when one day he got sick from school, probably from lack of sleep because he spends all night on his phone. I decided to stay home and watch him, so that maybe I could have a man-to-man talk with him. My son was whining about how his head hurts, so I said to him, "Grow a pair, you're a man," as a joke, but he of course took it seriously and went up to his room. For lunch I cooked him my signature steak, something we hadn't eaten in a long time, but he refused and said he wanted some soup or sushi. I got mad at him and thought how ungrateful he was that I had done all of this for him and he wasn't even respectful enough to eat it. That's when I saw him going through my wife's cabinet looking for an aspirin and Theraflu. I asked him what he was doing and he said he was taking some medicine. I told him that he wasn't. Our bodies are meant to naturally heal themselves and not have those artificial cancers in our body. I insisted he tough it out for a day and that it was emasculating to take a pill, but he was persistent on taking the medicine. I had had enough. I told him to get in my car and that's when I drove him to the forest we used to love hunting in. I told him to find his way home, because he needed to toughen up. He was becoming such a little wuss and I always wanted my son to become a man like his father. I obviously didn't just leave him stranded, but I waited outside the edge of the forest. When he met me outside he told me there was nothing worse I could do to him than continue being such a hateful father. I told him I was proud of him for making it out of the forest, but that he was grounded and wouldn't have his phone for the next month so that he could get back in his right mind. I was shocked that he would cry over such a stupid little thing, but he needed to learn a lesson, and one day he will thank me for this. When he got home though, what he did next shocked me. People who have survived an attempt on their life, what happened? I was coming home from a girl's house who I was seeing at the time. I ended up leaving her house at about 11 p.m. which wasn't unusual, and on the weekend buses went till about 1 a.m. so I didn't have much to worry about. I got on the first bus to head to the Sky train station without anything out of the ordinary. Got on the Sky train and still not much to bat an eye at other than your usual crowd. Now when I reached the bus terminal after the second bus there were only a few of us left on the bus, including the sketchy guy sitting in the corner, but as I mentioned it's late and on the weekend, so just figured that he was just another guy going home. So everyone gets off the bus and I pick up my stuff and get off the bus. I was probably the last or close to the last person to get off. Around the whole bus loop they have the stations for buses to pull up and have the departure times posted. So as I am heading over to check how long I would be waiting for, this guy waves me over, sketchy guy from the bus, so I take out my headphones to see what he wants and he proceeds to ask me if I wanted to have a smoke with him. I responded saying no thanks, I don't smoke. The guy proceeds to take a step towards me and stabs me twice, completely random and out of nowhere. The guy ends up wounding me in the heart and in the liver. It was a really surreal feeling. I remember it feeling as if I got punched in the gut and got the wind knocked out of me. It took me a second to realize what happened. As I'm hunched over trying to figure out what the hell just happened, I look down and realize I'm bleeding, and not just a little bit, I was losing blood at what I assume was a pretty quick rate. I just ended up falling to my knees and without much thought to it started yelling for help. Luckily for me there were still some people at the loop waiting for their buses and rushed over to help me. I remember this one girl who I believe was coming from the local mountain from a ski trip or something like that ended up coming down to the ground and tried to keep me calm. I guess one of the bystanders ended up calling 911 and from what I was told, the time from the call being made to the time I got to the hospital was within 20 minutes. The time for the whole event is kind of jumbled in my head. Next thing I remember the ambulance is there and are loading me onto a gurney and into the ambulance. I guess the body's natural reaction is to curl up into a ball to keep vitals safe, but the paramedics kept having to tell me to lay flat so they could do their thing, but I remember that being one of the hardest things to do. I remember them asking me personal questions like my name and where I live, just basic things like that, and in my head I knew the answers but at the time just could not vocalize them. I asked the paramedics in there how bad it was and if I was going to make it. Of course they don't answer, which at the time frustrated me to no end, but looking back makes total sense, just to not freak me out more than I already was. Last thing I remember of the night was being wheeled into the ER and grabbing onto someone's scrubs. It all kind of went dark after that. My girlfriend secretly flirts with men for money. Honestly I don't know where to start. I'm 20 and have been dating my girlfriend for a few months now. I thought things were good and I started to actually let my guard down. I've had a few bad relationships in the past just like everyone else, and she truly made me feel special. She helped me start getting sober and was supporting me as recently I found out I had been taken advantage of a while ago. She's been my rock and now it's falling down. Anyways, yesterday she was over and I saw a notification from her Gmail saying attempted login from an account and I was confused but brushed it off. Later when she went to the bathroom I checked that notification to see the username. It was a Snap account with Princess, her name, Findom. She came back and said she's going to take a nap, and at this point I'm shaking and all the worst things are going through my head while she's asleep. I looked through Instagram for that name and couldn't find anything. I checked Twitter and to my surprise she was there. An account with her profile picture tweeting almost every day asking men for money. Posting very sexual and seductive photos, not quite NDES, but still types of photos I would never get. I scroll and physically couldn't keep my head straight while I'm looking through all these comments on Twitter saying how much they want her, etc. I decided to leave the house and go for a walk to try to get my mind straight and work out how to talk to her about this. About an hour later I come home and wake her up telling her to log into the account. At first she acts confused, but when I told her I had seen the Twitter her face dropped. She opened her phone and went to log in while saying she never used it, but obviously that was a lie because she had posted on Twitter literally the day before she saw me. She logs in and there's multiple men, they had all left her on open, the chats weren't saved and I couldn't see what was going on and I'm not sure I would want to. After this she started crying saying she felt disgusting doing it and she needed the extra money. I got her to open Twitter DMs and find all sorts of chats with her dominating men over it, with her doing things like joy and other sexually degrading conversations. I never saw any nudes, thank God, but I'm not sure I believe that she doesn't. I then kicked her out the house as she begged, saying she would deactivate the account. But I just don't care anymore. I'm so lost and I don't know what to do. My whole life just crumbled down and I'm struggling to make it through the day. I have no one around me, so I'm here alone trying to keep myself together. The Smiling Man. About 5 years ago, I lived downtown in a major city in the US. I've always been a night person, so I would often find myself bored after my roommate, who was decidedly not a night person, went to sleep. To pass the time, I used to go for long walks and spend the time thinking. I spent 4 years like that, walking alone at night, and never once had a reason to feel afraid. I always used to joke with my roommate that even the drug dealers in the city were polite. But all of that changed in just a few minutes of one evening. It was a Wednesday, somewhere between 1 and 2 in the morning, and I was walking near a police-patrolled park quite a ways from my apartment. It was a quiet night, even for a weeknight, with very little traffic and almost no one on foot. The park, as it was most nights, was completely empty. I turned down a short side street in order to loop back to my apartment when I first noticed him. At the far end of the street, on my side, was the silhouette of a man, dancing. It was a strange dance, similar to a waltz, but he finished each box with an odd forward stride. I guess you could say he was dance walking, headed straight for me. Deciding he was probably drunk, I stepped as close as I could to the road to give him the majority of the sidewalk to pass me by. The closer he got, the more I realized how gracefully he was moving. He was very tall and lanky, and wearing an old suit. He danced closer still, until I could make out his face. His eyes were open wide and wild, head tilted back slightly, looking off at the sky. His mouth was formed in a painfully wide cartoon of a smile. Between the eyes and the smile, I decided to cross the street before he danced any closer. I took my eyes off of him to cross the empty street. As I reached the other side, I glanced back. And then stopped dead in my tracks. He had stopped dancing and was standing with one foot in the street, perfectly parallel to me. He was facing me but still, looking skyward. Smile still wide on his lips. I was completely and utterly unnerved by this. I started walking again, but kept my eyes on the man. He didn't move. Once I had put about half a block between us, I turned away from him for a moment to watch the sidewalk in front of me. The street and sidewalk ahead of me were completely empty. Still unnerved, I looked back to where he had been standing to find him gone. For the briefest of moments, I felt relieved, until I noticed him. He had crossed the street, and was now slightly crouched down. I couldn't tell for sure due to the distance and the shadows, but I was certain he was facing me. I had looked away from him for no more than 10 seconds, so it was clear that he had moved fast. I was so shocked that I stood there for some time, staring at him. And then he started moving toward me again. He took giant, exaggerated tiptoed steps, as if he were a cartoon character sneaking up on someone. Except he was moving very, very quickly. I'd like to say at this point, I ran away or pulled out my pepper spray or my cell phone or anything at all, but I didn't. I just stood there, completely frozen as the smiling man crept toward me. And then he stopped again, about a car length away from me. Still smiling his smile, still looking to the sky. When I finally found my voice, I blurted out the first thing that came to mind. What I meant to ask was, "What the duck do you want?" In an angry, commanding tone. What came out was a whimper, "What the foo?" Regardless of whether or not humans can smell fear, they can certainly hear it. I heard it in my own voice, and that only made me more afraid. But he didn't react to it at all. He just stood there, smiling. And then, after what felt like forever, he turned around, very slowly, and started dance walking away. Just like that. Not wanting to turn my back to him again, I just watched him go, until he was far enough away to almost be out of sight. And then I realized something. He wasn't moving away anymore, nor was he dancing. I watched in horror as the distant shape of him grew larger and larger. He was coming back my way. And this time, he was running. I ran too. I ran until I was off of the side road and back onto a better lit road with sparse traffic. Looking behind me then, he was nowhere to be found. The rest of the way home, I kept glancing over my shoulder, always expecting to see his stupid smile, but he was never there. I lived in that city for 6 months after that night, and I never went out for another walk. There was something about his face that always haunted me. He didn't look drunk, he didn't look high. He looked completely and utterly insane.
Am I the jerk for leaving my boyfriend's condo and flying back home after he peed in my suitcase? I have been dating this guy for a few months now. He recently got relocated to another state for work, temporary, but we don't know exactly how long. I flew down there on Saturday to visit him for the week. We were having a fantastic time until Sunday night. At about midnight, I got woken up by the sound of the TV getting knocked over. I sat up, looked around, and saw him standing in the corner of the room facing the wall. Obviously super creepy to wake up to, and then I realize what he's doing. He's standing by the desk and peeing in my suitcase. I start yelling at him, but he's incoherent and has no idea what's happening. After I turn the lights on and he sort of snaps out of it, I ask him why he did that on Earth and says he has no idea. As soon as I saw the look on his face, I knew something wasn't right. I go out to the kitchen, and lo and behold, he drinks almost the entire bottle of vodka we bought at the store that day. Even after I found the bottle, he denied being intoxicated. For context, I do not drink. My last serious boyfriend was an alcoholic, and living with him was extremely difficult. My current boyfriend knows this and, up until now, has always been very respectful. While I know his drinking is heavier in his free time, he's been able to keep his drinking to a reasonable level in my presence. I don't want to limit his freedom. Still, being around him intoxicated makes me uncomfortable, so this was the compromise we agreed upon. He insisted on returning the clothes to the laundry building right then, and I fell back asleep waiting for him. When I woke up, he was sleeping face down on the couch. I woke him up and told him I was distraught by what happened last night and wanted to discuss it. He dismissed me and said he was busy relaxing and didn't want to be bothered. Several more times, I asked him to please sit up and talk to me about this, and he refused and wouldn't even lift his head to make eye contact. Finally, I started packing my stuff in a backpack. My suitcase was ruined. I told him his choices were to continue laying on the couch or get up and talk to me, otherwise, I was going home. He ignored me. As I was putting on my shoes, he finally sat up and asked if I was for real. I said yes and didn't want to do this again. He didn't try to stop me, so I took my stuff and walked to a Starbucks a couple blocks away. I called my best friend and mom, then took an Uber to the airport and got home on the next flight. After I was gone for about 20 minutes, he texted me and asked what was going on, and I said I was going home. His response was, "All right then." Now he's saying he was too intoxicated and doesn't remember anything from the morning, and it was unfair of me to leave before he sobered up. I think what I did was justified because he knew that heavy drinking was not something I was comfortable with, and not only did he sneak and do it behind my back, he continued to try and lie about it after he got caught.
My friend got revenge on his nosy racist mother on his wedding day. My best friend transformed his wedding into a huge revenge party. So my friend was together with his girl for a good 6 years at the time of the story. The whole story takes place in Germany, where mother-in-law's family comes from. My friend's wife's family is of Sinti background. Now Sinti and Roma do have a bad reputation here in Germany. They are called gypsies, and supposedly are all scam artists, who have no real home and travel around to be always 2 steps ahead of the law on their heels. You get the picture. But her family is actually really well off, in fact quite a bit richer than mother-in-law, but she did not know that, since instead of asking she decided that her prejudices are a better source of information than simply asking, since all gypsies lie, don't you know? Lives in Germany for well over 30 years and own their own company that produces motor parts for several big car and truck companies. Mother-in-law's family is typical middle class, nothing much to say there. Dad works an office job, and she works delivering drugs for a pharmacy a couple hours a week. She's always been a big pain in their butts. These are just a few of the stunts she pulled. The first year of the relationship she pretty much ignored he had a girlfriend, until she saw a photo and realized his daughter-in-law is a few shades too brown for her taste. She first thought she was Arabian and called her a sand N-word. Isn't she so lovely? Friend then explained her being Sinti, and she lost it even worse. It boiled down to her being a gold digger or a scam artist, and constantly switching between the two. But friend has a steel spine, and it ended in her being in a timeout for 6 months, which became over a year since every time she tried to force contact, the timeout started again at 0. Once contact was established again, mother-in-law had realized open warfare was not something she could win, so she decided to switch to guerrilla tactics. The absolute highlight was creating 2 fake Facebook profiles, one for friend, and one for his ex, with whom he had spent 4 years of his life. She sent back and forth texts for months, to create a fake affair. Thank God she made a grave mistake. My friend had 4 weeks prior to a 4-day business trip for his company. The texts basically claimed his ex had come with him and they had wild intimacy every night. What mother-in-law did not know was that my friend never went there. It fell through a week prior, and he took the days off instead to do a short trip with his girlfriend. So he had the best possible alibi for the time. Otherwise I don't know what would have happened on the day mother-in-law came into the house with printed out screenshots from that page. At first the girlfriend was devastated and pissed, until they found the messages about the business trip. At that moment both turned on mother-in-law, who of course denied everything. It landed her in 9 months' time out again. The rest until the engagement was mostly annoying, like constant hints. She learned her lesson about N attacks and racist rants at least, at her being not trustworthy, bringing up news stories that showed Cindy in a negative light etc., etc. But since they were in low contact, she did not have many opportunities. Then came the engagement about 1 year before the wedding. Her family was over the moon of course, while mother-in-law had a complete meltdown over the phone. The worst sentence was she would stop this wedding and if it is the last thing she would do in her life. The actual wedding planning began, and it was a total crap show. When she was asked for an address list, she actually gave them false addresses, in the hopes once the cards would have been returned it would be too late to send a new batch to the actual addresses. Of course the cards came back within a week, and this time they were smart enough to ask someone else for the addresses, and simply did not tell her. She started a rumor campaign that was at least partially successful, so the contact with his side of the family got worse and worse. She tried to just cancel the flowers, but since the florist knew the bride in person he called her to confirm. After that everything was secured with passwords. This way they found out she also tried to cancel the venue, change the whole menu. Most of the bride's side of the family are vegetarian, and she tried to change it to an all-meat menu, and other shenanigans. Finally came the thing that made my friend and his fiancée snap and decided it is time to show the woman who is boss. He had found out, thanks to his brother, who had volunteered to work as a spy in the enemy camp. He acted like he was on his mother's side, when in reality he was firmly in his brother camp, that all the women on his side planned to come in black mourning clothes. To make it clear, this was not a day of joy for them, but a day of mourning, since her son made the biggest mistake of his life. But since they wanted to embarrass her to the bone, they acted as if they knew nothing, and decided to exact their revenge on the wedding day. Important, this was a good 4 months before the wedding, so it gave them ample time to plan. So the day of the wedding comes, all the guests have entered the church and are sitting down. The guests are informed that the wedding party would be late by about half an hour, but they would show a DVD in the meantime. And that DVD was explosive. They had collected evidence, and witness accounts detailing exactly how sneaky mother-in-law had tried to sabotage the wedding. It started with an account of the food deliverer that she had tried several times to change the menu. Followed by the florist story how she had tried to cancel all the flowers for the wedding, including a message she left on the answering machine trying to act like she was Dill, but everybody knowing her could hear it was her. Up to this point, mother-in-law had been shocked into silence. But the next part would change that. The groom's brother had secretly recorded how she trash-talked and lied about daughter-in-law to everybody who would listen to her on Skype. Brother simply installed spy software that recorded everything, emails, Skype, etc., and created a highlight reel. Once she started to hear those words, she suddenly screeched like a banshee and stormed to the front to stop that DVD. But they had anticipated that, before she could get even close, 3 gentlemen closed in on her and told to either sit down or she would be escorted off the premises. The film only went on for another 3 or so minutes anyway, so till they had escorted her back to her place, where was her family and all this? They had already had a full showing of the video the day before, but were sworn to secrecy. So they acted as normal as they could till the DVD started, then just shot daggers with their eyes. Now once the film was over, the father went to the altar with his wife and addressed the family of the groom. He told them the following: "Our daughter could have accepted they do not like her, and had tried for years to get a good relationship with all of you, especially with girlfriend. Again, there are so many smaller things I had to leave out, but to no avail. She was either insulted or shut down." Finally they started to plan the wedding, and girlfriend was trying everything to ruin this very special day for the two, and they finally had enough. So the couple has decided your side of the family does not deserve to be at the wedding. I hereby inform you that there will not be a wedding today at all. Months ago they have changed everything to a different date. My daughter and your son have married a week ago at location and let you believe the wedding would be today. That way we could ensure there are no further evil plans to ruin this young couple's wedding, and we all had a wonderful wedding. Without any of you there, it was a day of joy, and a day where everybody was happy for the couple and supportive. Right now they are already on their honeymoon, and will return in 4 weeks. Since the wedding was so much smaller than originally planned, they had a way bigger budget for that. Once they return, they do not want any contact with any of you for a year. After that, they are ready to get into contact again under certain requirements, which you will be told once the year is over. The girlfriend will be able to confirm they will do this very strictly. Any attempt to contact them in any form leads to the perpetrator's year starting again at 0. I suggest you take the year to reflect on your behavior, and decide what is more important to you, to a friend in your life, or to treat my daughter badly, because right now he is ready to cut contact for good. But I talked him into giving you one last chance. My friend's family stayed very silent during this speech, probably shocked and embarrassed into silence. P.S. Mother-in-law was not the only one in the family treating daughter-in-law badly, but she was the reason for it. They are back in contact with most of the family, but definitely not mother-in-law. After the year was over, some sheepishly apologized and told the couple about all the lies they were told. But brother could slowly but surely, using his evidence, show the family how she triangulated, lied, tricked, etc. Today mother-in-law is a pariah for at least 80% of the family. People with psychopath siblings, what's it like? My 15-year-old brother has been abusive for years. It started off with him lying constantly and being a nuisance to those around him, at home and school. Then he started to get rough, he'd play rough and hit hard. Soon after he started to bully my little sister, which is when him and I started to fight physically and argue constantly. I watched him rope her once, and hurt him very badly for it. I told him I would call the cops, but never did when he threatened to take my life if I went through with reporting him. But from then on we have been fighting a lot. I'd leave marks via scratches and he'd punch and kick, so I'd be the only one to leave marks, which led to me being blamed for everything and punished while he got away scot-free. Starting about 5 years ago, he has gotten way worse. He's ordering people around as if he were an adult, drawing weapons to hurt us, and hitting us constantly. He writes entire letters about hurting us, and gives it to us. I showed one of these to my mother, who just laughed as she claimed it was part of his humor. He takes whatever he wants, he breaks things, ruins the state of the house, torments my cats and so much more. No adults do anything about it. Mom only blames it on his ADHD, which he refuses to take medication for. Dad doesn't get involved, and everyone else just doesn't seem to understand. He tried to hurt me with a hammer and drill for taking my cat out of his room, and when I ran to Mom she just scolded me for not telling her about it, but every time I do she brushes me off. Today he tried to hurt me with a metal pole for not putting a box in the recycling bin. He also cursed me out because I broke the garage door down after he locked me inside. He called me a psycho and yelled that all I know how to do is break things. Even though he broke my door down because I put a lock on it. On top of all of that, he is spoiled. Mom lets him do whatever he wants. She lets him order us around and she justifies him hurting me because she thinks that I was super mean to him as a kid and blames me for him being like this. She blamed me for him starting a fire in the kitchen. She blames me for everything he does. Therapists, what was the moment you realized your client couldn't be helped? I arrived at 6 a.m. and got a handover and a heads up from the workers on shift. They warned me this kid was violent, but as far as I knew it wasn't anything I hadn't seen before. When you looked into the eyes of this child, there was a darkness unlike anything I'd seen before or likely will see again. It was obvious that the evils this child had endured had destroyed their soul. This child attempted to proposition me for intimate favors as soon as we were alone. When I tried to redirect the conversation to appropriate methods of expressing gratitude, this child shifted. They took a pencil out from under the desk and charged full pelt, screaming, "You're a sick man who likes me, you're just like the rest of them, don't touch me." This child proceeded to wound me multiple times before the other worker was able to subdue them. This same child was on a very unique child safety order. The terms of the order were a direct contradiction of the legislation and had to be signed by the state manager. This child was to be kept on site unless medically necessary due to the danger to themselves and the community. Once the escalation settled and the nighttime routine begun, the child asked me for more soap. As I approached with the soap, the child had peeled the mirror off the bathroom wall and hit it over my head before lunging at me with a shard. I managed to catch their wrist and disarm them while my coworker secured the debris. The child then swallowed a piece of glass and smirked at my coworker and I, knowing we'd have to take them to the hospital. Once at the hospital, the child ran away before even entering triage. This is where it gets interesting. In her safety plan there were 25 possible addresses the child frequented. A common behavior of the child was to exchange intimate favors for dope, so the houses we had to search for her at were filled with less than desirable folks. I received a call from the police to say they'd located her at a nearby service station. Upon arriving, the child had doused themselves with fuel and threatened to light herself and the whole place ablaze. She ran away again but wasn't seen or heard from for the rest of the night. That was my first shift with a child that had put 42 other workers on work cover. I worked with them for another 8 weeks before throwing in the towel. I had a mental breakdown and began intoxicating myself heavily for the first time in 10 years. I had begun taking prescription medication for the pain this kid caused me and for the mental anguish. I later found out he was born into an exploitation ring. I ended up getting fired for one day snapping at her and breaking her hand. What happened to the class bully from your school many years later? I had a school bully who used to bully and intimidate me in front of girls. He was much taller and stronger than me. Complaining to the teachers did not help. I planned to take him on my own, and once when he was unaware, I pushed him down the stairs. He went rolling down like 15 stairs, and I followed behind him and kicked him in his stomach and on his face. One teacher broke up the fight and separated me from him. The teacher scolded me, but I was too angry to hear her rant. I was totally unaffected by what the teacher was saying. Ultimately, the teachers punished me and called me a shameless fellow. Next day, our parents were called in school in the principal's office. The principal was out somewhere, and both the fathers started discussing what had happened. I had already told my father everything. To my and my father's surprise, the bully's father apologized to my dad for his son's behavior. My father was surprised and said that their kids' fights happen. You don't need to apologize. The bullet's father then went down on one knee and apologized to me for his son's behavior. He also made his son apologize to me. Just then the principal came and started complaining to my father about my behavior. The bully's father intervened, said his son deserved worse and he has no complaints. Basically everyone left the principal's office, things sorted out. But from the next day, the behavior of the bully changed, not only towards me but towards everyone in the class. He became more humble, more studious. He also used to break up fights, but never raised his hands on anyone except to defend. Basically later he got a lot of friends. We both also became friends and are still friends 25 years later. I later learned that his father is a very rich industrialist owning 5 factories. He easily had the clout to teach me a lesson. He admonished and disciplined his son instead. Today my friend looks after his father's business and has clients in many countries. He is a successful industrialist.
I just cried in a stranger's arms. So it's been a very rough time for me lately. A lot has happened and I'm struggling very bad right now. Today I drove out of town to Sonic. There's none near me, closest ones being an hour. I wanted to treat myself since I've only had it once before a couple years back and also because well shite's been rough lately. They messed up my order and didn't secure the lid on my shake. As I get onto the highway to go back home, the milkshake spills all over me in my car, but I couldn't do anything because I was on the highway. So I cried and drove back. I get to my boyfriend's house, not in my town, visiting for weekend, and I just opened my passenger door to clean it all and just started sobbing. A random lady yelled at me, "Hey honey, come here." Now it's 81 degrees at this point and in her bare feet she walked on the road to get to me. She hugged me and told me to let it out. So I did. I told her how it's been hard lately and I broke my phone today and I was so excited for the Sonic and now what had happened. She invited me inside, her husband made me a milkshake and she and her 2 daughters helped me clean my car. She told me if I ever need a mom, to come a couple houses down and she'll be there. Honestly? She and her entire family showed me pure generosity and kindness, and I've hardly experienced that in my life. She let me keep wipes and scent remover for my car. I feel okay now. Just gotta wipe off my running mascara. Thank you neighbor lady, I'm bringing you flowers next time I visit here.
What's a dead giveaway that someone has come from poverty? My dad never ate when mom and I did. He'd sit at the table with us, but he always had stomach trouble that didn't seem to clear up until we had finished our meals. Then, if there was food left he'd say, well, I guess I should try to eat something. If there wasn't anything left, he'd say that he just didn't feel like his stomach could handle anything. I didn't realize until I was an adult that he was waiting to be sure that my mom and I had enough to eat before feeding himself, and that he went to bed hungry on more than one occasion. It didn't occur to me what he was doing, because his mother, younger sister and younger brother confirmed that he'd done this since he was around 10. He went hungry as a kid, to make sure that they didn't. Nowadays, even the simplest meal at his house looks like a Thanksgiving feast for an army, but he always fills his plate last and never takes a second helping until everyone else has finished.
My wife kidnapped our kids. My wife and I have been fighting for months. She came home positive for multiple intimacy diseases. After finding out I got myself checked and tested positive for some also. At first I was in denial about the reality. My wife cheated on me, of course she profusely denied it. We spent weeks arguing. It wasn't the first time I caught her cheating. I had also found pictures on her Google Photos account with pictures of her with her ex while with me. I could tell it was during the time with me because of the timestamps, and I had pictures on my phone with the same date wearing the same clothes and hairstyle. She begged me to forgive her, and I did, considering she was pregnant with my firstborn daughter. This wasn't the only problem we were having. After moving to New York I noticed the stressful life really got to her. She started to take it out on my kids. I was not okay with the way she treated my 3 and 4-year-old. For months I was stopping her from laying hands on my children. I decided that my only option was to ask her to leave. After 3 weeks of arguing she left and took my kids without my consent. I was devastated that she took the kids. After frantically calling her asking her to bring back my kids I called the police. They told me she went to a shelter. At this point my panic and anxiety is through the roof. The next day my mother tells me she spoke with my ex-wife. My mother began berating me by yelling through the phone, how could I, her only son, do such a thing? I joined the dots. She thought I was the abusive one. I decided I can't stand idly by and do nothing. I got some bad advice from the police and waited for her near her job to try to get my kids back. As you can imagine I got in trouble and even got the police called on me for loitering. When they arrived I was told that I was harassing her. She came with the police the next day to get her things, and the police told me that since she took them to a shelter, they have to stay with her while we fight for custody. My only option has been to go to see my kids at school. It's been hard for my 3-year-old. He gets hysterical when I leave. My 4-year-old has taken it a little better but not well either. She has been sending them to school with soiled clothing, unwashed hair and bruises. The director also told me she's noticed a huge difference between my interactions with the kids and how they interact with her. My kids get excited when they see me but not her. Apparently when she drops them off it's like she's dropping off a package, she doesn't even say bye to them. Am I the a-hole for announcing mine and my wife's pregnancy after my brother's newborn just passed? My wife Amanda got pregnant recently. We were yet to announce it, but before we could do so we learned about the death of my nephew. My brother's newborn had DED, and he informed us about it. We went to his house to offer our condolences, and they were in a really distraught state. Here's the thing, I was buying a few supplies for my wife related to her pregnancy, when I had gotten the announcement, and as I rushed to my brother's house immediately upon getting the message, we still had the purchases with us. Upon reaching there, we offered our condolences, and remained present for quite a while. It seemed as if my sister-in-law Emily was either pretending to keep her composure or looking for a topic to divert her mind, but she casually asked us what we were doing, considering the purchases, and what we had bought. I hesitated to answer, but she had already noticed some of the stuff in the bag and asked what those were. It was pretty obvious that they were related to the pregnancy, and although we said it's nothing, she seemed curious to know. So we told her that she was pregnant. Emily began to cry when she learned what it was, while my brother began to accuse me of announcing it when they were dealing with the literal death of their child. He got into a huge verbal sparring with me. And they had called me tons of rude names, both in real life and in the family group chat. My parents took their side, but I told him that we were about to announce it anyway, and that I hadn't wanted to lie since Emily had already kind of noticed what the stuff were. I am now being berated for just being honest and I don't see what I did wrong. He never showed me any love, but today I finally won. My dad has Asperger's and is notoriously difficult to deal with. Growing up he never really told me that he loved me or hugged me, he just assumed that I knew and wouldn't say it. It was a difficult time, having a dad that didn't understand your emotions or any sort of affection. But he does love me. How do I know this? For his birthday, I made him a small leather bracelet, just a simple band. The inside had an expression he often used with me growing up, and the outside had the nautical coordinates of the dock he used to take me fishing at every Saturday morning when I was a kid. It was our thing. We wouldn't talk, but I liked being outside and I knew he liked it because every weekend, without fail, he would ask me if I was ready to go fishing. No prompting from mom. He simply called me to say thanks for the gift, and he hung up. I didn't think much of it. But anyways, my mom called me yesterday and asked if I had told her neighbors about the bracelet I made. Dad. I was confused. I had not told them. She said that she hadn't either. She told me that they were talking to her about what a great gift it was and were asking if I could show them where to make one like it. We realized Dad must have been talking about it to them, and actually showed them. Dad never talks about things he likes, especially to strangers. She then told me that he's been wearing it almost every day. Again, this is a man who is not about adornment, and she saw him sending a picture to his brother. He might not say it, but that's how I know he misses me. Hope to see you soon, Pops.
My manipulative mother-in-law requested for a paternity test and my foolish husband allowed it. But he won't see it coming that he would be getting a divorce paper with it. My mother-in-law was always overwhelming and bold with her input on everything, to put it nicely. I genuinely think it's not fair to be mad at your partner for something he didn't do himself. He can't control what his mom does or say. But what's also not fair is him not addressing it when I am clearly uncomfortable or upset and instead just talking me into brushing it off or going with it. It's actually true, the saying when you marry someone, you marry their family. I think the way to handle it is that each spouse should keep his side of the family in line, for lack of a better way to say it. I deal with my parents and their shenanigans, and I expected him to do the same. He never did. He always asks me to give her some grace. Well, it's hard when that person is insulting you. For a while now she has been making comments about how my son doesn't look like my husband when he was a toddler. Basically accusing me of sleeping around. This rightfully upset me. I was short with my husband because he didn't address how out of pocket and disrespectful this whole thing is. It has been a week since my husband told me that he would be doing a paternity DNA test, not because he thinks that it's not his son but to shut his mom up. I don't know which one is worse, him accusing me of cheating or this poop. But all I know is this is audacious. I didn't cheat and I am not concerned one bit about the test results. I wasn't going to stop him from taking a DNA test or whatever, but I just know I don't want to deal with this any longer. I am looking for an apartment and I talked to a lawyer the day after he brought this DNA test thing up. And I've been acting more than normal since. We'll be getting the results in 2 days. I can't wait. He would be also getting divorce papers with that too. I know for a fact he won't see it coming. Update: the day he was supposed to receive the results, I called my father-in-law and invited them to come over that evening. My husband was working when he got the results. He sent them to me and told me he would talk to his mother to finally put this to rest. I informed him that I had already invited them for this evening and I am just waiting for my apology before I leave. I asked that he come home so we can talk before they come over. He called, and I basically told him that this is not working for me anymore. I've already talked to an attorney, filed for divorce, and it might be more expensive than a paternity test, but it would be more effective making his mother happy. He left work and came home. Long story short, we had a spectacular fight. He said that I am not thinking about my son and I am overreacting because it's not like he went behind my back. And if he knew that I was this upset, he wouldn't have done it. But he knew. We fought about it when he brought it up. He just didn't care. When I gave him the divorce papers, he said he's not signing anything and he'll ask his mother to apologize when his parents arrive and get done with this. Listen, I don't need him to sign it to get a divorce. It would only make things complicated, that's it. His mother said she has nothing to apologize for. She wouldn't apologize for having suspicions. She didn't accuse me of anything and I can leave if I want to. So that's that. I did leave that night because I wasn't going to get an apology, and he didn't seem to understand that him reinforcing that it's okay for her to meddle is why I want a divorce in the first place. He eventually told his parents he'll be coming over from time to time to check up on them, he is their only child, and not to bother coming over anymore until she apologizes. She wasn't amused. She told me I am taking her son away and some re would take my son too. She is not someone that you can talk to, I'll tell you that much. It's like talking to a wall. All she knows is insulting or being passive-aggressive on a good day.
What's something that will mess you up for life if you experience it just once? Last month I found my 18-month-old daughter unconscious and not breathing after she got tangled up in a washing basket. I did CPR for 8 minutes until the ambulance arrived. She was dead in my arms, but I managed to get her just breathing again with CPR. She was in a coma for 2 days in intensive care, but she survived. I know what it is because I felt it for those 2 days. It was horrible, toxic and corrosive for my soul and mental health. 3 things that have helped me post-incident. Firstly, I did everything I could to help my loved ones despite the horrific situation. Keep telling yourself that no matter what, you can't stop bad things from happening. You can't stop freak accidents. You can't control when a heart valve will stop working. But you can control how you react when these incidents do happen. My CPR was heroic. Keep telling yourself that you did everything you could to help in the uncontrollable circumstances. It is very protective against PTSD in the long term if you frame it this way. You really did do everything you could to help. Secondly, no what ifs. They don't change anything. You can spend a lifetime in vain trying to bargain or imagine alternative histories or timelines, but they will never come to pass. What happened happened and no amount of rumination will change that, so don't even start. No what ifs, no if onlys, they only steal joy and time from the present. No one can predict what will happen in life, and when it will all end. But you can control how you choose to view life's events, and choose to frame the brief flash of time we all have here together in the universe. Frame it well. The time you got to spend together will never go away. You get to choose how you live the rest of your life now. Go live your best one, mate. What's something your gender does that the opposite gender never even thinks about? A lot of men try very hard to not seem like creeps or pervs, whereas I've never heard of any woman making any similar effort. For example, I am currently at the beach. Literally, I am sitting in a chair in the sand about 15 feet from the Atlantic Ocean. There are about 40 other people within eyesight on this beach, including a group of teen girls to the right of me who've been taking bikini selfies for about 2 hours. They're hard to ignore, because they're doing weird poses and giggling a lot. To the left, there are more women in bikinis. They're sunbathing, so I'm making a point to keep my eyes on my laptop, the book I'm reading, or the ocean in front of me. I hesitate to look left or right, lest I get accused of being a creep. But there are also a lot of scantily clad men out here too. The women around me seem to have no problem staring at these guys. Older women, younger women, it doesn't matter. When a shirtless guy jogs by, it happens a lot. There's a Marine base near here. Some of these women are downright shameless in their gawking. Imagine if a guy did that to a woman running by, especially if that woman was a generation younger than them. They'd be driven off the beach by an angry mob, accusing them of being a pervert. Yesterday, I was sitting on the deck overlooking the ocean, using my binoculars to scan the horizon. I was looking for dolphins or boats or whatever I could see. But, as soon as a family with teenage girls showed up on the beach, I put the binoculars down. Seeing a dolphin isn't worth the risk of being thought of as a possible creep. My crush humiliated me in front of a whole party. I left and now everyone is telling me I'm a jerk. On Thursday, a person I had a major crush on in high school, but who rejected me, messaged me out of the blue. She had never contacted me without my contacting her first, and at one point I realized she had me blocked on social media, and so I found it odd that she was suddenly being friendly. After sending a couple of greetings/questions about how I've been, she said that she was going to have some people over and wanted to know if I would get the beer. The drinking age where we are is 19, and she and the people who were going to chill were all 18. The liquid substance stores in my area all card. I thought it was silly that my being a month older meant I could buy substances and they couldn't, and so I said I would love to go. She said, "Thanks, I'll pick you up at 7. 7 o'clock rolled around, and she texted me to say she was in front of my house. I went out dressed and ready to chill with some people, and she drove me to the liquor store. When we got there, I asked what beer she wanted me to get, and she told me to get Budweiser. I hid my disappointment as well as I could, but it was her party so I went in and bought 2 cases of 24. I got back in the car and said let's party, and she was eerily quiet. I noticed that she wasn't driving towards her neighborhood, but rather back towards mine. I thought she had moved or something, but didn't want to press the issue. When she turned down my street I finally figured it out. She was being purposefully vague about the invitation because she wanted me to get the beer, but she wanted a way out when she told me I wasn't actually invited in the first place. She stopped in front of my house, leaned over, kissed me on the cheek, and said, "Thanks," in her best voice. I deadpanned her and asked when she was going to tell me I wasn't invited. She feigned surprise and said that she never intended to invite me in the first place. I sat in silence for a long awkward minute, picked up the beer, and walked towards my front door. She got out of her car and frantically tried to re-invite me to the party, but I told her that what she did was the most humiliating thing that ever happened to me. I opened my front door, slammed it a bit too hard, and came back to my room. Now I'm sitting here drinking absolutely unpalatable piss water, and I have text messages from all of her friends and are asking me why I'm being such a jerk. I don't think I'm the jerk for reacting the way I did, but if you haven't figured it out I'm not amazing socially so I'm not sure. Am I? What's the main reason us girls keep finding men with red flags? A few years ago I had a guy in one of my college history classes. Over a few months I would catch him looking at me all the time until finally one day he asked me on a date. I told him I'd love to and we agreed to go to an Italian restaurant. I get there and go inside and he's nowhere in sight. Our date was for 6. He didn't show up until 6:45. I'm a very punctual person so this really got under my skin, but he apologized profusely and told me he had gotten out of baseball practice late and came as soon as he could. So, I just let it go and we started talking. He really bragged and stressed to me how he was in the minor leagues and was about to go pro. He was 28 at that time and I'm not too familiar with baseball, but I thought that was a little late in life to be going pro and he didn't look like he had played a sport in years, but whatever, I just listened. And after so long we started talking about what we wanted for our futures, kids, jobs, etc. He told me he wants to get married and play baseball, nothing else. I said no kids? And he said no, this planet is full of rapists and murderers and he refuses to add another rapist or murderer to the world. I just sat there and looked blankly. I said, well, I think the odds of you having a rapist and or murderer as a child is pretty slim, trying to lighten the mood, and he cuts me off and asks if I'm retarded and if I hear what I'm saying. And this man went on a full 40-minute rant about the Roman Empire, mass murderers, Islam, rapists, and crazy conspiracy theories. He would go back and forth between this cool laid-back guy to this crazy the earth is going to burn extremist. So I excused myself to go to the bathroom, found the waitress and personally left her a tip, and then ran to my car and left. When I saw him in class that next week he avoided me. Completely picked up his desk and moved it across the room like a child avoiding. Every time I'd answer a question he always had a rebuttal, even if the answer is a clear-cut answer, or he would elaborate on what I said because I didn't explain it right. After so long he dropped the course and I never saw him again. Lady pretends to be my mom and tries to kidnap me. I can't remember my exact age, but I was young enough to fit in the front seat of a shopping cart at a big store. It was like the late 90s or early 2000s. My mom and I were shopping at a place called Costco. It's this huge store where they sell things in big amounts, food, clothes, books, you name it. Think of it as a Walmart but with extra large cereal boxes and lots of frozen dinners. My mom has this funny habit of parking the cart on one side of the aisle and then going down the shelves to pick stuff. Then she comes back to put things in the cart. I don't know why she does it, but moms do strange things sometimes. So there I am, maybe 4 or 5 years old, sitting in the cart and playing my Game Boy Color. My mom stops next to a bunch of fruit and tells me she's going to check out the deals. I'm okay with that because I'm into my Pokemon game. After a little while, I notice the cart moving. I figure it's my mom pushing it, but it's not. I see this lady with curly black hair, kind of like my mom's, but different. She's older and has these red nails. My mom never paints her nails or has them long. I look up and realize this isn't my mom. I say it pretty loudly, like, "Hey, you're not my mom." She laughs and tries to go faster. I say it again, even louder. She looks at me, tries to tell me she's my mom, and asks about my game. Now, the store is set up so you can see pretty far in the produce area. And guess what? I spot my real mom a little ways off. I yell, "Mom!" as loud as I can. My mom turns her head, and this fake mom tries to cover my mouth, but it doesn't work. My mom comes charging over, and let me tell you, she's not small. She's like a linebacker, all tough and strong from playing roller derby and softball. The fake mom tries to hold me, but then she just lets go and runs away. My real mom asks me lots of questions, and I start crying because I think I'm in trouble. The fake mom is gone, and even though they looked for her, they didn't find her. I don't know why she picked me or what she wanted. Maybe I was just a cool kid, but I'm just happy my real mom scared her off.
Have you ever gone no contact with your entire family or a particular family member? Yes, I did, my entire family, as well as my in-laws. I met the love of my life back in 2010. We moved in very quickly with one another, started talking about marriage and kids. We were young, but we knew what we wanted. We both unfortunately came from abusive families. I believe that's also what made us so close. So when we fell in love with one another, we fell hard. We wanted love in our lives, we wanted happiness, we wanted to heal old wounds, and we found that in one another. We both knew what it felt like to feel unwanted, unloved for so long, that we refused to carry on that generational trauma. We became the black sheep, but for good reasons. We got engaged in 2011, welcomed our first child in 2012, married in 2014, and had our second child in 2015. During this time our families whom we still were involved with at the time, were still trying to abuse us in ways. And what was worse is our children saw the pain in our eyes anytime we went around them, but they didn't fully understand as their grandparents showed them a different side when they were around, so we tried to keep the peace for our children's sake. My partner whom I met, married and had kids with as a man, came out in the summer of 2017 about having gender dysphoria and wanting to transition from male to female. I was not surprised, in fact deep down I always had my suspicions. I 100% have been supportive, and we still are happily married. But her coming out did not go well with my family, nor hers. We anticipated this though. The abuse got even worse after that, and it got so bad that my dear mother, if you could even call her that, would belittle me any chance she got. I was always doing something wrong. I had to walk on eggshells anytime she was around, and my father would just allow it to happen to me. It was disgusting, and why I ran away from home when I was 15. I was abused so badly in my childhood that I don't entirely feel comfortable saying what all transpired. I also think a part of my brain blocked out some of the trauma as a defense mechanism, but that's another story. I stupidly thought when I had kids of my own, that they would change, but sadly love can be blind. My mother would try to manipulate me to leave my partner. She also threatened that she called child services on us if I did not leave her, and we were so mortified that we moved far away and finally dropped contact. She later admitted in a cold email that she only left them a voicemail without our names. Then once she realized we had moved far away, she then resorted to calling the police. She reported us as missing while heavily implying my partner had something to do with it. We were so upset trying to explain our situation to the police. They thankfully said they didn't believe my mother but wanted to check up on us anyway. When that didn't work she then tried to threaten she would take us to court through an email. For what? We don't exactly know, but it never happened. I still find it a total oxymoron that my parents whom abused me all my life had the audacity to try and mess up my now happy life. My wife's family unfortunately were extremely toxic as well, and although we tried with them, they showed zero effort back. They also did not accept my wife's transition. I understand it's a hard pill to swallow for some, but she is my wife, not theirs. I'm sharing her bed, not them. She is no different, just looks different. If our kids and I can accept and love her no different, then you would think our families would too. But honestly cutting ties with them needed to happen anyways. It still hurts, but we also need to be happy in our lives, and without them makes us happier. When we moved across the country from them. They still have tried to send cold emails, but I recently blocked all of their known email addresses. Good riddance.
What is the dumbest mistake you have ever made in a relationship? I met my boyfriend and we began a long-distance relationship that was working pretty well, due to the fact that my job allows me to freely travel for little to no cost. It is also a benefit because I can have a travel companion for virtually nothing as well. I met someone and fell in love, head over heels. He wanted to go to places like Cuba, New York, and I made it happen as soon as I could. I consider experiences a love language, and I was in love. Anyway, a couple months ago the relationship was on a decline. Our work schedules weren't aligning and it made it difficult to see each other. In turn, this made any kind of arguments or disagreements worse because we couldn't be together to fully discuss and hash things out face to face. One day he called me to ask for a break and I simply replied with a yeah. It could be a break for good. I don't really believe breaks are beneficial. For me, you either stick it out and work on the issues or leave. Although my heart was ripped to shreds, it was mostly an amicable break. I told him we could stay friends and if he needed help with traveling my benefits still have him tacked on so there is no use in wasting them. I figured he'd use the benefits to see his friends that are stateside. He lives in the Caribbean, or visit his family or something along those lines. Nope. After ignoring me for a while he popped up out of nowhere and asked for me to send him to Barcelona. This was obviously a big ask but virtually no cost to me, and I stupidly figured this was an olive branch to us remaining friends or part of each other's lives. Maybe he was going through something and needed some soul searching and a reset. After he comes back from vacation, it is his birthday and he starts posting online pictures of him and his friends over the last year. This is how I found out he had been dating someone else during the time we were together. Even better, he had gone to Barcelona with this other girl and had a beautiful dream of a vacation. Unknowingly, I sent my boyfriend that I was still in love with on a romantic vacation with someone he had been cheating on me with over the course of our relationship. Oof.
My unhinged husband went livid and went to the police to try to press charges after I hugged him. Now, he's threatening to call my employer to tell them I am an abuser. My husband 40 and I used to be very affectionate with each other in a playful, flirty, and warm way. A couple of months ago, he decided I was too clingy and that he wanted to be the one to initiate all physical contact from then on. I know he has also been coming to terms with some issues from a problematic childhood at that time, so I wanted to give him space and not make this about me, especially as he promised to continue being regularly affectionate. He has done so, maybe a bit less than before, but we still have some affectionate touches daily and more intimate activities a couple of times a week. A few days ago, I learned I had gotten a big job promotion and bonus. When I got home, I was so excited that I threw my arms around him, violating his rule that he needed to initiate contact. He immediately pushed me away and got extremely angry. It was not a sexual hug at all, it was more like the kind you see sports team members giving each other when they win a big game. I tried to apologize, but he started yelling about how I was an abuser and traumatized him. He then asked me to leave. I quickly packed a few things and went to a motel, not wanting things to escalate further. But what shocked me more was after I left, he tried to go to the police to press charges, but they said that a quick hug from one's wife, even if not expected, was not the kind of thing they would prosecute. He is now threatening to call my employer to tell them I am an abuser who engages in sexual misconduct in my personal life. My husband's brother continued to stay with him while I stayed at a hotel. After a couple of days, I got a call from brother-in-law asking me to come home to talk. It turns out my husband has been having an affair with an intern at his company and is deeply in love and wants to be with her. He wanted to make me the bad guy, so first started with the no-touching rule, figuring I would get fed up with it, or that eventually I would make a mistake and he could use that too. Claim I was an abuser so that I would be the bad guy. It was also a way to reduce intimacy of all types with me while he was falling out of love with me and in love with his affair partner. So, he made up the stuff about trauma flaring up and isn't having a psychotic break, although has some level of mental problems to do something so cruel. For what it's worth, he did apologize. Said he was just so in love with the other woman and couldn't deal with hurting me directly by leaving me right away, so came up with this plan. I just got a little too caught up in character when I gave him the mistaken hug by calling me an abuser, making a police report, and threatening my job. We sat down and talked about everything and agreed to a cordial and quick divorce. Dividing assets 50-50. Thankfully no pets or kids. I know I could probably make things harder for him under the circumstances, but I just want to move on as soon as possible and put this all behind me. I have a good job and income and don't need anything from him other than my freedom, ASAP. I hooked up with a foreigner who has a long-term girlfriend, and I feel horrible for her. For reference, I'm a female first-year college student at a coastal college in the eastern United States. I was walking downtown one Friday night with my friends after leaving a music venue, drunk, when I make eye contact with a guy, but for an abnormally long amount of time. I mean at least 10 seconds. I notice that he's cute and perhaps a little too old for me, but I'm a little drunk and I'm feeling bold, so I turn around and walk up to him. I asked him for his Snapchat, because that's just an easy way to talk to someone, and he mutters to me, "I'm from Germany though." I tell him I don't mind and I'd like to get to know him. He says okay, and we exchange Snapchats. For a few days, he did not reach out, so I figured he wasn't interested. Okay, whatever. But he eventually reached out and we began talking frequently. We tell each other all about each other, where he tells me he is studying in Germany to be a doctor, how he is on a tour of the United States, about his hopes and dreams, family, and I do the same. I start to feel a sense of closeness to him before we even met up again. One night he asked me to hang out with him and his friends before he left for a new city to visit in America. I happily say yes. However, he is 23, and so are all of his friends, so he suggests bar hopping. Long story short, I get my fake taken, get extremely embarrassed, but he decides to come back to my dorm with me. We talk for a while and eventually we make love, some of the best, might I add, and we did many times, but irrelevant. We end up spending the whole night telling each other so much about our lives and being extremely vulnerable with each other. He had to leave the next morning for his flight for the next US city on his list, so he leaves. I'm left at home, a little sad that it came to an end, but content, realizing that this was a one-night thing. I shouldn't become obsessed. I'm not delusional, and knew he probably did this kind of stuff with a bunch of girls. He is subjectively a very attractive man, and with that accent, I know other girls ate that up too, but still I was happy about it. I expected him to not reach out much while on his tour, and he didn't for a lot of it. But he would occasionally send me pictures of Vegas or San Francisco or Hollywood Boulevard or text and ask how I'm doing. He then told me that he is going to make a detour from his plans and come back to my town to see me. Obviously, this is very exciting for me, and I say yes, and we make arrangements for him to come stay the night. He flies back to me and comes over. He greeted me with a necklace that he bought me while he was gone, matching his, and put it on me. We again talk about our lives in depth, our futures, and his tour. We make love again, multiple times, and we ended up staying up until like 4 in the morning, just talking. Couldn't tell you everything we discussed, but it was very intimate, and he is an extremely romantic person. Like when we woke up, he watched me get ready, telling me how beautiful I am and how upset he is to say goodbye, kissing me in between every step of my morning routine. Right before he left, he pulled me back into bed, and told me to never settle for less, that whoever ends up with me is an extremely lucky man, and that I am beautiful, intelligent, funny, kind, etc. He told me he wants to one day fly me out to his home and show me where he lives. It was a very sweet moment for me. I started crying because I don't think anyone's ever told me such nice things. I know though, that men will say anything to get in your pants, but this felt real, at least to some degree. We hug and kiss, and tell each other, have a great life. And he walked away. Later that day, he removed me as a friend from his Snapchat. I'm pretty upset, but again, realized this was not going to be a long-term situation, so I was okay. I brushed it off as a cool meetup with an awesome person that I was lucky to meet, once-in-a-lifetime person that I'll never forget. This goes on for about a month, neither of us reaching out. Fast forward to last night, some guy adds me by search on Snapchat, not a name I recognize, but I accept it anyways. He sends me a snap, and to my shock, it was a German guy, saying that he misses me so much. I ask him why he is contacting me on a Snapchat of a person's name that isn't his. He then sends me paragraphs explaining that this was a fake Snapchat, that he has a long-term girlfriend back in Germany, that they aren't doing well and he wasn't sure if he wanted to really be with her. He told me that spending time with me was really great and refreshing for him, that he will never forget me and I was more special to him than I realize, but he doesn't want her to find out, so he will be talking to me on this Snapchat because he doesn't want to lose contact. I didn't say much, I just told him that while I feel the same way, that what he did was wrong and I wasn't sure what to say. He said, I know, sleep well and when you wake up we will talk about this more. I'm not sure what much there is to talk about. There is the Atlantic Ocean and a girlfriend dividing us, not like we are going to get married. But he was very special to me and I am ashamed to admit that I do want to talk to him. I love the plot. He blocked me on Instagram, assuming so I cannot find the girlfriend. I will probably stop talking to him and write this off as a crazy thing that happened to me in college, but I am sad. I feel guilty and terrible for the other girl in Germany. But he was one of the most memorable people I have ever met. My sister thinks I am not a good mom who cannot discipline my child. Now she's livid because our neighbor compared our kids and called her son troublesome. My sister and I had our sons around the same time. My nephew turned 7 in October, and my son turns 7 next month. I was 20 when I had my son, which was a big deal with my sister. She's 10 years older than me and had no expectations regarding me as a mom. She predicted I would end up single, my son's dad would bail, and I would give up within the first year. Instead, we were married and had 2 little girls after our son. We are very different parents. My sister is very strict and disciplined as a mom, with many rules and swift, harsh punishments for bad or subpar behavior. My husband and I would fall into a gentle parenting deal. We teach our kids how to act in public, but we do so in a very different way from my sister and her husband. My nephew can be very challenging, and he's an angry little boy. I suspect it's because his parents are often angry, and he is picking up on that and building resentment, which has worsened his behavior. Our parents had brought this up with my sister in the past, and she has told them it's not true and claimed my son behaves far worse despite them saying it's not even close to the truth. Our parents had both boys on Saturday, and my sister and I arrived to pick them up simultaneously. Our parents' elderly neighbor approached my sister and told her that she should speak with her son because he is rude and disrespectful to others. My sister told the neighbor that she had the wrong sister and that my son was the kid who got into trouble. The neighbor said she knows the boys apart and who the mom is to each of them. She told my sister that my son was adorable and showed no disrespect the way her son did. My sister was furious. The neighbor told her that thanking someone, my son, for picking something up for her does not warrant being yelled at and cursed at by a small child. My nephew got an attitude and told her nobody had to help her because she was old and couldn't do anything for herself. My sister went off on the neighbor and said her son was much better behaved and accused her of spreading lies. The neighbor walked away mid-tirade, and my sister started to turn on me. Instead of letting her, I said she needed to stop being bitter and examine her parenting instead of going off on people complaining about her son's behavior. I told her I would not let her take it out on me, that she was wrong about me as a mom, and that a lot of her anger comes down to that she hates that I don't get the same comments. She tried to yell at me, but I just got my son off our parents and left. My parents asked me what happened and I told them. They said I did nothing wrong, but my sister and her husband are both now coming for me for what I said, and they told me it wasn't my place to say all that disrespectful stuff. Am I the a-hole? ETA. My parents are supportive, and my sister and her husband told me it wasn't my place. I realize now I did not make that super clear in the end. I wish you would kick me out. My childhood best friend is getting married next year. 1. I am so happy for her. 2. I don't love traditional weddings, and I think they are a huge waste of money, but that's just me. I support all of my friends, however, they chose to celebrate their love and commitment. Anyway, I moved away from home about 2 years ago now. I live about an hour from my hometown, where my 5 to 6 friends live. When my friend, let's call her Shay, decided she wanted to go dress shopping, I wasn't able to attend because, at the time, I had a demanding job with a bitch-ass boss who basically never let me leave the office. I apologized profusely for not being able to attend and felt horrible about it. She said it was okay and I could go to the next one. Well, the next shopping excursion rolled around, and this time I had to attend court for my job, and my boss, yet again, wouldn't go for me or let me leave early because she was a bitch. Again, I apologized and felt awful, and Shay told me it was okay, but I understood she was a little sad. I would have been, too. Now, Shay let us know that for her bachelorette trip, she had decided to go on a 4-day cruise to the Bahamas. Now we are all in our early 20s, and none of us besides one of the bridesmaids have good-paying jobs, for this big of an expense. I am still currently in college and also working 40 hours a week, so all of my bills go towards rent, utilities, gas, effing food. I am by no means in the position to be going on a damn cruise. The cruise is $1,500, on top of a flight to Miami for $540 for one way, and then I'd probably have to pay the same amount just to get back. The meal and drink plans are also $100, $150 each. At first, I didn't think I'd be able to attend because of the cost, but later realized if I saved a certain amount each week, I could probably pull it off. About a week ago, I found out that my first week back to school was the same week we'd be going on this cruise. I take school seriously. It is my main priority. I texted to let Shay know I wouldn't be able to attend the cruise due to school, apologized, and offered to throw a party for all of us and take us out somewhere either before or after the cruise so I could attend at least some kind of bachelorette trip for her. Shay texted back and asked to have a chat. I immediately knew she was not happy with me. She then called me and told me she wanted to kick me out of the wedding because I was not supportive or active in the events. Which is so far from true. She then said that I missed both dress fittings and said, I hope you didn't buy your bridesmaid dress already, and thought that I did not want to participate or show up because I was jealous of her. None of this is true by any means. I would love to attend but cannot miss my first week back. After about a 3-hour talk, she said she would keep me in the wedding for now, but she'd let me know if she changes her mind. She also told me that the other girls are questioning why I am at the bridal party since I'm not going on the cruise, and they think I'm a bad friend. Am I the a-hole for wanting her to kick me out so I don't have to deal with this bullshit drama?
Redditors who've survived a kidnapping, what's your story? My situation was kind of a kidnapping, by my mother. My parents separated when I was in 2nd grade, but didn't finalize the divorce until the summer before 6th grade. In 5th grade, I was living with my dad and visiting my mom on weekends. Easter weekend, my mom handcuffed me to a bed and wouldn't let me go home. When my dad came to get me, she told him I didn't want to live with him anymore, but was too shy to tell him myself. This was believable because I hated confrontation. She kept me handcuffed to the bed for a few days, I guess waiting for me to calm down. She'd escort me to the bathroom, and kept me fed and watered. One morning while my mom was asleep, I was able to wiggle my hand out of the cuff, and I ran away to a gas station and called my dad at a payphone. I don't even know how I knew his number. My dad came to get me immediately, but my mom had woken up and followed me. It was the closest gas station and I walked up there all the time growing up. She got there before my dad did, and was screaming at me and trying to pull me into her car. My dad eventually came, and I pushed my mom down and jumped into his car. We drove off, headed back to his house. On the way home, we were stopped and surrounded by several cop cars. I don't remember how many. Apparently my mother had called the cops, saying my dad had kidnapped me. The cops kept asking me questions, but I was crying so much I was probably unintelligible. I don't remember how everything was resolved. My dad didn't get in trouble, but amazingly neither did my mom. She remained a constant toxic presence in my life until shortly after my 23rd birthday, when I cut her out completely.
My ex's crazy girlfriend told me to never message him again when I wished him a happy new year, so I screenshotted it and sent it to him. He broke up with her. My first boyfriend, Vince, 30, and I dated for a year and broke up on good terms. We usually send each other holiday messages as a courtesy, but that's as far as it gets. So, as usual, this new year Vince sent me a text, and I, being polite, sent him one back. Fast forward to this morning. I got a message on Instagram from a girl I don't know, and this is what it said: "Hey girlie, I am not sure you know me, but I am Vince's girlfriend. We've been together for a while now and we are very serious about each other. I see that you message him and like his pics. I would appreciate if you stop that. We are going to get married, and this sort of interaction is not appropriate anymore. I hope you understand that inserting yourself in our relationship causes turmoil, and I cannot handle the stress and anxiety of it anymore, so I am kindly asking you to stop." I was floored. I actually just started laughing. But I also got angry. She's misrepresenting things in her message. I checked out her profile. She's 23. I was a bit surprised by the age gap, but whatever floats their boat I guess. She has plenty of pics of them together, so it's legit. She's his girlfriend. I felt like this girl was imagining things. She's claiming me liking some of Vince's pics and wishing him happy birthday is causing turmoil in their relationship. She says I am inserting myself into their relationship. Vince isn't even my type anymore, and I don't waste my time by texting him. I didn't even know he was in a relationship. I ranted to my best friend about it, and that's when I just snapped. Why is a random 23-year telling me who and when to talk to someone? It's not like I'm trying to get in his pants. I know what's down there, and it isn't very appealing. So I took a screenshot of her little text and crafted my own "Hey girly" text. For Vince. I may not love him anymore, but he doesn't deserve a crazy girlfriend stalking his texts 24/7. When I sent it, he opened the message instantly and just spewed out his apologies. I could tell he was sweating through the screen. He told me that he never allowed her to look through her phone, that he didn't know why she was texting me, etc. I told him it was fine, but he wouldn't stop sending me apologies. Not even 3 hours later, my phone started blowing up with text from his girl screaming that I'm a homewrecker, that she's pregnant and needs him. She even sent me a voice message of her singing Jolene, begging that I don't take her man. Every single message she sent, I sent straight back to him. When he saw that she was pregnant, he told me straight up that she had to have been lying. Why exactly? Turns out she closed her tubes so that Vince could go in unclothed. At that point, I had to say good luck and leave because my fiancé was waiting for me in the other room to go to bed. I guess they're perfect for each other.
Ever accidentally sent a rant email about your boss to your boss? I effed up big time. I sent an email to my boss venting about her and all the SHT she had been putting me through for the past 6 months. As an admin assistant at a small company, I had been working with her for over 3 years and it was getting worse by the day. She treated me like crap, belittled me in front of others, and constantly questioned my abilities. During our annual review she even hinted that if I didn't show improvement by the end of the year then my job would be on the line. Today was another difficult day with her being extra bitchy as usual. We were swamped with calls and emails from clients having issues with their accounts, so I volunteered to handle most of them since it was close to closing time, 5:30 p.m. except Fridays when we close at 5 p.m. While resolving one client's concerns, they requested documents to be faxed urgently before proceeding with their transaction, so I quickly printed out what they needed and told my boss everything was ready for tomorrow morning as per our usual routine. Only this time, exhausted and frustrated after a long day, instead of saying yes like normal, I accidentally said yes out loud without thinking first. My heart sank as soon as those words left my mouth, realizing what had just happened, but before I could correct myself she already read my initial response and exploded demanding an explanation for why I suddenly changed my answer.
My self-centered sister dressed like my daughter's favorite princess and called her entitled when she cried. Our Disneyland trip is ruined. My daughter Sarah is 5 years old and loves everything Disney. Her whole room is covered in drawings from the movies and shows, and all her favorite toys are something from it too. But obviously her favorite is Ariel. I swear this girl thinks she is the real Little Mermaid and my husband, and I think it is just the cutest thing ever. I am a huge Disney person too. Take this time to leave your comments about Disney adults being cringy. I can take it, so I know that there is a Little Mermaid experience at Disneyland in California. I know my daughter would just love it, so I brought it up to my husband and he thinks it's an awesome idea, but thought it might be even more fun to bring my mother and sister along too. It was going to be perfect. We told our daughter about the plan and just like any other little kid she can't wait to go and can't stop talking about it. I did some research with her and we learned about this place in the park where you can take your kids to get dressed up like one of the princesses. They get to have their makeup and hair done and they get covered in sparkles and all that. It's nothing crazy, but I bet it feels pretty special for the little girls. And I thought, hey, for her first time going to Disneyland it might as well be as magical as possible, right? So we drive all the way to California with the 3 of us and Auntie and Grandma in the car. It was about a 15-hour drive from where we live. We only had enough to pay to go to one of the parks, and of course we chose the one with Fantasyland because my daughter says she is dying to meet the princesses. She says, "Mommy, I want to ask Em my questions and get some answers." That's what Ariel says in the movie. Do you remember? Of course I remember, but I love her curious little mind. When we were getting dressed to leave for the park, I was telling my sister about the place where Sarah was going to get done up like the Little Mermaid. My sister thought it was so sweet and said maybe she'll dress up as the Little Mermaid too and they can match. I knew she was trying to be sweet but flat out said no. Sarah wants to be Ariel and I wanted her to have her special moment. This should have been the end of it, but my sister prickled right away. One thing about my sister is that she absolutely hates being told no about something, especially if it's something she wants to do. She asked me, why does Sarah get to have all the fun? I want to be a princess too. Okay, well, Sarah is a child, I told her and scoffed. And it's her first time at Disneyland, I just want her to have some fun, can you just let her have this? And then I just left the room because honestly the conversation was over. After all, adults aren't allowed to dress in costume in the parks anyway. We headed towards the park and my daughter was really getting wound up excited. My husband and I were going to take her to the younger cartoon area of the park in the morning and then my mother and sister were going to meet us after. Honestly, those first few hours were bliss. My daughter was having so much fun and we even got a picture with Mickey and Minnie, which is like so rare. I think I'm even going to frame the picture and put it on my desk. But she was still on a one-track course to get a Little Mermaid costume, and I was not going to stop her. We called Grandma and I said meet me there so we can take a picture of her before and after. When my mom and sister met us there though, I knew we were going to have a big problem because my sister had dressed like the Little Mermaid anyway. We all have red hair too, so it was really obvious. I didn't think she would be able to dress like a character in the parks, but apparently they let adults do it if they're wearing regular clothes that just happen to look like what the character wears. So she was wearing like a purple tank top and a long green skirt or something, but it was obvious right away what she had done. In fact, there were even people around her stopping to compliment her, saying how beautiful she was and how much she looked like the Little Mermaid. I looked down at my daughter hoping she hadn't noticed, but I could see that her heart had completely dropped. I knew that should be her that was the Little Mermaid, not my sister who I had already said no to. I ran right over to her like, what the hell, bitch, why did you wear that? My sister laughed her stupid little laugh like, what are you talking about? I'm just wearing regular clothes, but it shouldn't matter anyway because your daughter can share. Then she looked down at my daughter and she was crying. She was trying to hide her face and be quiet because she didn't want anyone to see her crying, but her little whimpering was so sad. I said, look at your niece, you made her cry, what is wrong with you? My sister looked disgusted at me and was like, your daughter is so entitled, I can't believe she is crying over this. We can just both be the Little Mermaid, okay, Sarah? Sarah didn't say anything, just went to hide behind my husband. I made eye contact with my mom and we had this little silent understanding that I need this beach to be out of my sight or I am going to knock her lights out. So my mom took her away. My husband and I took Sarah into the place anyway. She said, no, it's okay, I don't want to anymore, mommy. Auntie can be the Little Mermaid and I will just be Sarah. I asked if she wanted to be any of the other princesses. She loves Merida too, and she thought about it for a second and then said no. For the rest of the day she was just quiet and would go on all the rides but didn't really seem like she was having fun. I know she's never going to forget this, so I will never let my sister forget either. Am I the a-hole for refusing to let my son attend sister-in-law's wedding? I am not white, but my husband is. My husband has a half-sister, Anne, that he is not very close to. However, she gets along very well with Jack, my oldest son. She sometimes offers to take him on auntie-nephew dates, which I allow as I do trust her. She's great with Jack and he adores her as well. Anne is getting married in a couple weeks. We were all invited, but my husband couldn't get time off work, and my mother will be visiting that weekend too, so we won't be able to attend. And asked if we could at least let Jack attend and that she and my mother-in-law would watch him. I was hesitant, but Anne and my mother-in-law told me not to worry about it, so I agreed. Then Anne told me that her father will be attending the wedding. I was surprised because she hasn't had contact with him for years, but they reconnected for her wedding. In my opinion, her father isn't a very good person. He's extremely racist and very headstrong about his beliefs. He is also easily convinced by certain kinds of media, and before we even knew he was attending the wedding, my husband showed me his Facebook posts and they were genuinely insane. Lots of generalizations about groups of people and justifying various horrors simply because of a person's skin tone or race. I told him that I don't know if my son will be attending anymore. She got what I meant and told me that her dad won't even be able to tell Jack isn't 100% white, so I have nothing to worry about. I mean, yes, my son is white passing, but with the current climate of things, I refuse to risk it. My son will sometimes speak my language and he is not 100% aware that he has to be careful around certain people yet. And got upset, told me that nothing will happen and I'm being paranoid. She even compared my paranoia to her father's. She then told me to think about it rationally, as the venue is a public place filled with people. I apologized and said I can't let him go. She started shouting at me and said I was ruining her wedding. She wants to spend it with everyone she loves, Jack included, and I'm ruining that by being paranoid. She then started crying. My mother-in-law called me later saying that she swears nothing will happen to Jack and to please get over it for Anne's happiness. I said no. She told me that she hopes I'm proud of myself for breaking Anne's heart. I do feel bad, and I suppose I am being paranoid. My husband is more hesitant about the decision, but ultimately agreed that we really can't risk anything. But am I the a-hole?
A stranger called me fat, but I was pregnant. After the birth of my son, who weighed 10 pounds and measured 24 inches with a 15-inch head, I was left with a lot of stretch marks. It took years of hard work to shed the extra weight and get fit again. I also left my cheating ex and started dating my now husband when my son turned 5. My new boyfriend took me on a short vacation to Miami, and despite my insecurities, I decided it was time to wear a bikini. We were having a great time at Nikki Beach in South Beach, sipping drinks and enjoying the atmosphere. That is, until I had to use the restroom. Inside the ladies' room, a woman I had never met, seen, or spoken to before approached me rudely. She said, "You know, they have plastic surgery for all that you know," while gesturing toward my lower stomach/abdomen area. I was left speechless. She assumed my silence was either approval or that I hadn't heard her, so she repeated herself, adding, "You really shouldn't go out in public like that because not everyone wants to see that." I was stunned, but I managed to force myself to burst into hysterical tears. She seemed taken aback and mistakenly believed my silence meant I agreed with her. She said, "I'm sorry you didn't know you looked that bad." Through my tears, I managed to reply, "It's not that. I have 7 children, and my baby, who gave me these stretch marks, just passed away 3 months ago." I continued sobbing uncontrollably. Her face twisted in horror, and her 2 friends, who had been standing by trying to ignore her, scolded her, comforted me, and then left the area entirely. I hope she learned a valuable lesson that day about the importance of empathy and not making hurtful comments about someone's appearance. My boyfriend cheated on me, yet somehow I'm the bad guy. Johnny was a caring and present partner, but he had a tendency to keep secrets. One of his secrets was Alice, whom he had met 5 months before he met me. He hid our relationship from Alice and kept us apart until it became impossible to hide any longer. It wasn't until a year into our relationship that I discovered the truth about Alice. I urged Johnny to come clean and tell her about me. He messaged her, informing her that he had a girlfriend, and he even showed me a screenshot of the conversation. However, he accidentally left in a part where he mentioned that their working relationship should also end. When I asked him about it, he explained that it was part of an inside joke they had, pretending to be a sugar mama and baby, and sending each other pictures of feet. They also flirted in these playful roles. Alice responded by congratulating him but expressing her desire to continue the roleplay because she enjoyed fantasizing about his feet. I felt uncomfortable, but Johnny convinced me that it was all harmless and that I was overreacting. As time went on, I stumbled upon more unsettling information. I discovered that during the early stages of our relationship, when he was distant and cold towards me, he would cancel plans with me to spend time alone with Alice. There was even a time when he had dinner with another female friend, whom Alice had previously tried to set him up with. He would disappear for hours and then lie to me about his activities, all while he had not yet told Alice about our relationship. I also noticed that he never liked any of my online posts, but I would often see his interactions with Alice on social media, where they even made reference to their foot joke. Johnny had been keeping things from me and engaging in various activities with Alice behind my back, but he always assured me that their relationship was innocent and platonic. My heart was breaking, and trust became a major issue, but I still loved him and chose to stay despite the constant arguments about Alice. Whenever I expressed my concerns, Johnny would become frustrated and break up with me for a few days. Around 3 months ago, we had another intense fight. I told him that I needed proof that he wasn't engaging in an inappropriate relationship with Alice. In response, he sent me some screenshots of their conversations. However, he had removed certain messages and selfies he had sent her, creating gaps in the conversation. It was clear that he had deliberately left out certain parts. After our breakup, Johnny went on to unlike all of Alice's photos, making me appear as the crazy one. I admit that I did become emotional during that time, which he used to his advantage to portray himself as the innocent party and me as the unstable ex-girlfriend. I called him incessantly, even going to his house to talk things through, and I even called him at his workplace until his boss had to step in and ask me to stop. I also reached out to one of his ex-friends, questioning whether he had cheated on me during our relationship. This person told me to leave him alone, stating that I was simply jealous and insecure about Alice. Shortly after our breakup, I noticed that Johnny resumed constant communication with Alice. In the end, he chose to maintain his innocence, making me out to be the crazy villain. It baffles me how he continues to portray himself as blameless, despite all the evidence and secrets that unfolded during our relationship.
Somebody has been leaving notes around my house. They're starting to freak me out. They started innocently enough. Don't forget your keys, read the first message, scrawled on a sticky note in loopy letters. It had been left on my fridge door. It immediately grabbed my attention because at the time I lived alone, I had no memory of writing it, and the handwriting didn't match mine or anyone I knew. I was slightly perturbed, but wasn't sure how to react. In the end, I just tossed the note and went to work. The second note came a few days later, left on my kitchen counter. The sticky note was pink this time but still had the same distinctive loopy handwriting. Make sure to pack a lunch today. Again, I was unsettled. Now, any normal person might have reported this to the police, but during that time I was going through a major depressive spell. I had moved to a new city away from my friends and family, and had started a new job that I quickly realized I hated and didn't nearly pay enough. Home was lonely and work was soul-crushing. I had trouble enough getting out of bed each morning, let alone filing a report that I am sure the police would not take seriously. Even more stressed, I crumpled up the note. However, I ended up packing a small lunch for myself. Usually I didn't bother to put in the effort and just ate cafeteria food, but against my better judgment I fulfilled the wishes of the note. That day the cafeteria was closed. The main cafeteria fridge had broken overnight and many of the frozen lunches inside had gone bad. Management thought it would be better to shut it down for the day. A feeling of unease settled in my stomach after learning the news. It was as if the note had predicted it. The notes continued throughout the following weeks. They would typically show up on random days, no more than 3 notes to a day. They were all left in obvious places in my apartment, all on sticky notes, and in that unfamiliar loopy handwriting. They began to grow more prophetic. Take I-80 today. There will be a bad accident on your way home. Janet is going to offer you some cookies at the office. Politely decline. They will give you food poisoning. Marie has been on a diet. Compliment her on her weight loss. She'll end up thinking well of you. Of course, I tested the notes to see if they were accurate. Every time I ignored their advice, whatever it warned against came true. One day a note said to pack an umbrella, and I purposely didn't. It was forecasted to be sunny that day so any normal person wouldn't think to pack one, but sure enough I got soaked that evening walking to my car. I was incredibly curious about the notes. There were so many questions I had about them, and those unanswered questions kept festering in my head. I tried writing notes back in return and leaving them out, but never got a response. I'd speak out loud and ask questions as if, or in case, the note writer could somehow hear me, but this only made me feel foolish. I'd occasionally make a surprise visit home at odd hours, just to see if I could catch the note writer leaving their notes. Of course, I never caught them. I tried installing cameras in my apartment, even making sure all of the cameras were completely hidden, but the next day I found every single one of the cameras' insides completely torn out and placed on the kitchen table with a single note next to them reading, "Never do that again." The notes stopped coming after that, which made me deeply regretful. I had grown accustomed to the notes. I had begun to rely on them even. They had significantly improved my way of life over the last few months both mentally, financially, and socially.
I had actually started making friends at the office thanks to their advice, and for the first time in my life I was even a bit popular. My managers, who before the notes didn't pay much interest in me, now valued my presence and would ask for my opinion on projects. It was no secret I was on my way to a promotion. Could I still do that without the notes? I also valued the notes as a friend, as weird as that sounds. Or more like a guardian angel. Wherever they were from, they were always protecting me. Without them, the future was suddenly unknown, dangerous. Every time some mild annoyance popped up from that point, from bad traffic to stressful work situations and even a minor paper cut, I thought about how this all probably could have been avoided if I still had the notes. The next week, a bright green sticky note appeared on my bathroom mirror. Don't forget to call Mom today. It is her birthday. I nearly cried. I decided to sack my investigation and just accept things as they were. Slowly, the fog of my depressive spell began to lift and I could feel myself returning to how I used to be. My confidence rose and for the first time in a while I felt in equilibrium with my life. I went out, cracked jokes, and even managed to clean up my apartment. I also managed to get a girlfriend somehow. Her name was Amanda. I met her at a pub when I was out with my buddies. The best part of all this is that for some reason, she seemed to actually be into me. She was gorgeous, way out of my league really, with long auburn hair that reached down to her back with soft brown eyes. Her laugh was lovely and the lemon-scented perfume she liked to wear was intoxicating. She was the type of girl you could chat with for hours and never run out of things to talk about. The relationship was still new so I was trying not to plan our whole future together in my head, but she was so lovable it was hard not to. At some point I briefly thought about telling her about the notes. I've always wanted to tell someone about it but never really had anyone to tell up until now. I decided not to however, afraid she might think I was crazy. There was no point so early in the relationship making her think I was a loon. Plus I was afraid the notes might stop again. If whoever was leaving them clearly didn't want me looking into them, how would they react if I shared what was happening with somebody? So at the moment I kept it to myself. Amanda had a hobby of cooking and had invited me to her house on Saturday for, in her words, the best fucking spaghetti you'll ever eat. I was pumped since this was the first time I would actually visit her house. I was in a good mood that evening as I was getting ready for the date. I hummed to myself happily thinking about how lovely this was going to be, and went downstairs to grab my keys. On the kitchen counter was a new hot pink sticky note. I picked it up instinctively. Kill your girlfriend. My brain stopped for a moment. I read it once, twice, a third time, the words flashing in my brain but hitting an error every time. I set the note down and gulped, feeling nauseous. Anxiously, I went to my car and started driving. I tried not to think about the note but the words kept circling in my mind. Kill your girlfriend. The notes have never failed me before, and they were always in my best interest as far as I knew. Which was admittedly not much. Maybe they were wrong this time? Maybe it wasn't meant to be taken literally? Kill could be a synonym for break up, right? My mind kept trying to make up poor excuses the whole way there. By the time I arrived I was a sweaty mess and not a lick calmer. I pulled down my sun visor to check my face and a bright green sticky note fluttered out. I went cold. The notes had never appeared outside my house before. Hands shaking, I picked up the note and read it. Kill Amanda. Take the gun from your glove box and shoot her. I looked at my glove box wide-eyed. I did indeed keep a handgun in my glove box for safety purposes. I wanted to puke, to believe this wasn't happening. Again, I ignored the note and walked up to Amanda's house, trying to shake the message from my mind. She answered the door almost immediately after I rang the doorbell. Hey, what's up? She said with a bright smile, but when she saw my face the smile dropped. You okay, Gary? What's wrong? She said in concern. Nothing. I lied, trying to force a smile. Well, actually I think I have a bit of a stomachache. Come in, she said, ushering me in. The inside of her house was cute and homely, and she fretted over me worriedly as she led me over to her kitchen table. She then took my hand and rubbed it comfortingly. If you're not feeling up to spaghetti, we can always have it another time. Don't worry about it. Do you want any antacids or something? I smiled. The way she was so concerned for me over a simple stomachache made me fall in love with her all over again. My heart panged with both love and guilt. The aroma of cooked spaghetti was also extremely strong, and even though she said it was fine I knew it would probably be a bummer for her to pack away all that spaghetti after just making it. I'm fine, sweetie. I probably have a stomachache because I haven't eaten much today. I was looking forward so much for your spaghetti. Her smile returned again. I always loved how fast she smiled at things. Well then, Mr. Hungry, let me grab you a bowl. She left for the kitchen. I reclined back inside, sticking my hands in my pockets. I felt a crinkle of paper. Shit. I pulled the paper out of my right pocket. Take your chair and bash her head in. I had a hard time controlling my breathing as I stuffed the note back in my right pocket. I also felt paper in my left pocket, and against my mind screaming for me not to, I pulled it out, realizing that it was actually two notes crinked together. Shakily, I unwrinkled the first note. Do not eat the spaghetti. Drugged. What's that, Gary? Asked Amanda behind me. I nearly jumped out of my skin. I stuffed the notes back in my left pocket. Oh, Jay, just some note from work I forgot was in my pocket is all, I said in a weird voice. She frowned, looked like she wanted to say something, but then thought better of it. Here, babe, she said gently, handing me a bowl of spaghetti. It looked heavenly. I wanted to puke. She sat next to me with her own bowl. She rested her head in her hands and looked at me excitedly, expectantly. I stared at her blankly. Well, take a bite, silly, she said, gesturing towards my bowl. I'm so sorry. I really need to use your bathroom. I jumped up and started looking for her bathroom. She jumped up after me, looking confused. Gary? What's wrong? You've been acting weird. When I found the right door, I went in and locked the door behind me. She kept knocking and knocking. Gary? Gary? Seriously, what's wrong with you? Is the stomachache that bad? Talk to me, Gary, please. I backed up and against the bathroom wall, then sank down to the floor. I pulled out the 2 notes from my left pocket again, this time reading the second note. My heart sank. She is not Amanda. How to ghost a friend without them ruining your life. Let me try to rephrase and make the story more understandable. I have a friend named Rose who I don't particularly care for, but I can't cut her off because it would affect my social standing. It was only recently that I realized my true feelings toward her, and I've come to the conclusion that I never really liked her. I met Rose last year during lunch breaks at school. Normally, I would spend my break alone since my friends had a different break time. However, I became close with a girl from a lower grade who would join me for walks during lunch. One day, she couldn't come to school because she was sick. This left me sitting alone, which presented an opportunity for Rose to approach me and strike up a conversation. It wasn't until later that I discovered why she wanted to talk to me. Rose had a crush on a guy who was infatuated with me, despite my unawareness of his obsession. He would take screenshots of my Instagram photos, zoom in on certain areas, and send them to Rose, calling them attractive. Rose has a tendency to become incredibly fixated on people. Because this guy had a crush on me, she developed a strong dislike for me. I suspect that the only reason she spoke to me was to gather information about me, as she has done with other girls in the past. It seems that she targets girls who have no connection to her other than being the object of her current obsession. This is one of the many reasons I don't like her, but I'll elaborate on that later. Despite feeling uncomfortable around her, all Rose would talk about was guys and sending explicit photos, which struck me as odd considering she wears a hijab. Nevertheless, I ended up becoming friends with her, which turned out to be a big mistake. She slowly pushed away the girl with whom I had become close during lunch breaks, criticizing her and encouraging me to avoid her until the girl found new friends. This girl was truly amazing, but even if I dared to disagree with Rose's negative opinions of her, I would receive a disapproving look. Months passed, and many lives were negatively impacted by Rose's actions. I must admit that I was brainwashed for a while, drawn to the drama. However, a few weeks ago, everything changed. My best friend of 7 years, whom I deeply care for, posted pictures on Instagram. I left some lighthearted comments, joking that she always looks great, along with a silly cat gif. Instead of responding to my best friend or making relevant comments, Rose decided to respond directly to my comments. She completely ignored my best friend's presence but focused on engaging with me. She even went so far as to say that she was about to simp over my comment. This had nothing to do with me but was directed toward my best friend. It made her uncomfortable, and she reached out to me about it. We both realized that Rose has become obsessed with me, although it's hard to explain precisely why. It seems to stem from her existing hatred toward me. Every guy she has liked has ended up developing feelings for me instead, on multiple occasions. It's as if there's a strange curse. Another incident occurred with a different friend when I commented that she looked gorgeous, and Rose labeled me as a cheater. This pattern repeated a third time, although it was somewhat more tolerable as it happened on my own spam account. Rose responded to every single person I interacted with, accusing me of cheating and expressing her desire to be in the photos with me. She has even begged me multiple times to attend her parties, claiming that she will contact my mom personally to ensure my presence. She is also a huge fan of Andrew Tate and his views on women. To keep this post from becoming even longer, I will skip over paragraphs of worse things she has done, such as threatening to leak an innocent girl's nudes. I need to distance myself from her to move on with my life. She drains my energy and has even told me herself that negativity is superior, while being positive is weak and cringeworthy. She has caused numerous problems, and being seen with her poses a serious threat to my reputation. Everyone knows how desperate she is for attention from men and how toxic she can be toward her own friends. I genuinely dislike her, and I'm afraid that if I hang out with her even one more time, I might lose control and confront her. However, I know that ghosting her could result in the same ruin she has brought upon countless other girls. I don't have explicit photos, but I'm aware of the rumors she could spread. I'm at a loss for what to do. I would appreciate any advice or help.
I stopped my husband from taking his own life. He thinks I never knew his plans. My husband and I are 28. We have 3 kids. He's the only boyfriend I've ever had. He's been with me since high school. He's always had low self-esteem. I do too, but not like he does. One day we got new phones. Maybe 7 years ago, I found out I can read his texts. He can see mine too, but he didn't know about it. This happened for like another 2 years. For his birthday and Christmas, I'd snoop around his texts and see if there's something he was talking about that he wanted. One day around November, I was being nosy to see what I can get him for Christmas. I was pregnant with our second child at the time. I saw he was texting someone, something suspicious, saying, "Where can we meet?" And I thought this was with another girl. I read them more and I found out he was buying drugs. My husband and I don't even drink, so I freaked out. I wondered about how long this was going in for, if I even knew my own husband anymore. Turns out he was buying something that doesn't get you high but kills you. I looked around everywhere. I tore a room apart and didn't find anything. I went through the search history and all his emails on his phone when he was asleep that night and found out he was making arrangements for a specific date. 3 months after I was due. He was looking at life insurance, which we have had since. I'm a stay-at-home mom. He was even looking up how much tea cost to be cremated. Once he got home, the first thing I did was sneak his phone and text that guy and say, "I'm no longer interested. If someone else tells you otherwise, it means someone else has my phone and delete that guy's number." I didn't want him to know I was snooping, but the thought of my husband not being around tore me. I remember being sick to my stomach and bawling in our room just thinking of the idea of not having him around. I love him more than life in itself. I would die for him and not even have to. Think about it. My husband is my entire world. That day on, I made sure he knew that, even if it meant embarrassing myself. I started bringing him flowers at work almost every day. When he would come through the door, I would screech with excitement and give him a hug and a smooch and tell him I missed him so much. And I couldn't stop thinking about him all day when I was out with him, how beautiful and handsome he was when he was around my friends. I'd say, "Look at my husband. He's so beautiful." I'd call him at work and ask how much longer until he's home. I got him to start going to therapy too. One night I woke him up because I was freaking out and couldn't sleep. I told him I had a nightmare. I said, "I had a dream. He passed away." He said, "Why is that a bad thing?" And I told him how he's my entire world, and other than our son and our other on the way, he's all I live for. He said, "But things would be better if I was out of your hair." And I said, "No, they wouldn't. If you left me, it would literally ruin my life." He said, "Not if you're financially well off. You'll be much better off." And I said, "I could have all the money in the world. It would mean nothing if I didn't have you. I'd much rather be homeless but still have you as my husband than be filthy rich and you'd be gone." And he said, "Are you serious?" And I said, 100%. I'd sleep under a bridge if it meant I still got to sleep next to you. He said, "I didn't know you felt that way." And I said, "I really do." I asked if I could go with him to therapy. He said yes. I told his therapist I think he has depression, and he admitted he might. He got a prescription, and it seemed to help him a whole lot. Even though it's been 5 years, I still do all those nice things for him, like call him handsome and bring him flowers. I don't ever want him to second guess for a second that he's my sunshine.
What substance ruined your family? Dope. My dad is an openly gay man and started going to festivals in the 90s. He would leave my brother and I in the car while he went to the toilet at parks, which later I found out was an excuse to hook up with guys in their late teens. Dad and his cousin were joking around and I remember overhearing a conversation about how they gave each other a disease when they slept together. He was in long-term relationships but that never stopped him from sneaking off and doing substances and hooking up with people. He would tell us he was off to the chiropractor and would come back 8 hours later saying his back feels readjusted. He eventually moved overseas after his relationship dissolved due to him cheating. When he came home he would spend more time having coffee with friends or at the chiropractor. My brother went to visit him overseas and that's when we found out the extent of his lifestyle. My brother is also gay, and Dad was doing dope in front of him and having men around. One of Dad's guests invited my brother to join in, and my brother did. They were all on dope. And my brother tells me he took part in the group bedroom activities with our father. My brother says the fact he did something so heinous eats away at him. We also found out my dad has the clap and has given it to my brother. My dad is now blind, suffers memory issues, has infections every month and suffers from paranoid delusions. He thinks he is being monitored by the voices. He is aggressive. He pulls weapons on his current husband. He forgets our birthdays and other details of our lives, such as the existence of his 13-year-old grandchild. The one time he did remember my birthday was a few years ago, and as a present he bought me $50 worth of dope. My dad, everyone.
Psychos robbed my house for drugs, so I got them addicted and arrested. I was a young, naive girl living with her boyfriend away from home for the first time. We had spent a bit of money fixing up a small house and furnishing it. As I was working my first real job at a retail store and my boyfriend delivered Chinese food, we weren't rolling in cash, but we were proud of our house and possessions. We also sold a little pot here and there at prices lower than one could find anywhere in town, and we had recently branched out to ecstasy and acid. This was 20 years ago, and at the time we did it mostly for our close friends and family. I had a best friend I'll call Rachel. Rachel, her brother Rick and Rick's girlfriend Raina were heavy into substances and would spend lots of time hanging out at my house. They always wanted to try whatever new chemical I had around and usually I was glad to have the company. I knew Rick was a shady F, but I never thought they'd be so dumb as to get in the way of their own supply of free substances. One day I had to go out of town with my family, and though I am not psychic or a suspicious or distrusting person by nature, I just had this terrible feeling that something awful was going to happen. Because I also have quite the collection of rare and antique coins that I have inherited, my first worry was a break-in. I waited until we stopped at a rest stop and I found a payphone to call my boyfriend. I had him hide my coins. He didn't want to, but I went on and on and on until I wore him down and he promised. Surprisingly, he hid them really well, but didn't conceal the 420, acid, ecstasy, or any of the money we had to re-up. Anyway, sure enough, I got a call from my boyfriend 2 days later. Our house had been robbed while he was out delivering food. Through diligent and enraged detective work on my part, I knew it had to be someone who knew I was gone as my boyfriend and I staggered our schedules so one of us was always home, except this trip. After uncovering incontrovertible evidence that it was the three amigos, Rachel, Rick, and Raina, my anger reached that point where it just simmers. You Fs want to rob me? Okay. No problem. I never let on I knew. I kept inviting them over. I bought new and better substances. With a smile, I kept on sharing these substances until one day, around a month after the theft. That day, with a flourish usually reserved for fine wines and unpronounceable French entrees, I brought out some really strong heroin and rigs. Now I don't do heroin. I never had before this, and when this was over I never did again. They hadn't either. It had taken me weeks to find a dealer, befriend him to the point of having him over to chill and feel comfortable at my place with my friends. All in preparation for this day. Judgment Day. I talked that dope up like it was the fabled nectar of Olympus. I showed them how to do it. I shoveled it at them like it was sugar and even did some myself. Over the next few weeks, I made sure they came by every day for free dope. On the last day, I had my dealer buddy over and made the introductions. From the kitchen, I heard Rick slyly ask the dealer for his pager number. Yes, that was my cue. Gradually I began to be too busy with work or I had family over. 1,000 excuses to not have them over. After 3 months of whittling down any and all interactions, they stopped calling and attempting to come by. I moved shortly after that and from afar monitored their descent into the throes of heroin addiction. At last count, Rachel has been arrested for heroin and petty crimes no less than 9 times. Rick has been to prison twice, jail 6 times with arrests beyond count. Raina has 4 convictions for heroin possession, petty theft, and prostitution. Maybe the punishment didn't fit the crime. I do feel bad. But I'm a thief and a betrayer of trust. No one breaks into my home and steals my poop anymore.
At what moment did you realize you were dating an idiot? 1. We were driving around this weird part of Las Vegas, and I said, "This is surreal." He said, "I know it's so real." I repeated, "Surreal," and he repeated, "So real." 2. He called lingerie linguine, as in the pasta. 3. I had been dating this girl for a few months, and it was Christmas time. We weren't super serious, but it was serious enough that I was buying her Christmas presents. I found something for her that was perfect, and it had a connection to some funny event involving her and my cat. So I made the present from the cat. I thought I was being cute and she would make the connection. Instead, she got pissed that my cat got her a present, and I didn't. I thought she was joking. To make matters worse, we were at her parents' place and they backed her up. It was extremely awkward, and I realized it wasn't going to work out. 4. I asked him about the class he was taking at community college. Him, "It's going okay. Better than last year." I failed it twice. Me, "Must be a hard class." "What's it about?" Him, "Learning strategies." He failed a class about how to learn. Twice. 5. She was out for a run one day, and when she came back, she said an animal charged at her, so she cut her run short. I asked her what it looked like and she said, "Like a cow, but brown." It was a cow. 6. When he told me quite seriously about how people with enough willpower can survive by photosynthesis, I decided then that I had to leave him. 7. He was getting his license renewed and they asked him if he wanted to be an organ donor. He said no. When I asked why, he told me it was because he didn't want the government to come knocking for any of his organs when he still needed them. He really thought that becoming an organ donor meant that at any time his organs could be taken. 8. Boyfriend took me to a fancy restaurant and we ordered wine. When the waiter came back, he gave my beef the cork to sniff. My beef, grabbed it, sucked on it, and licked it like a lollipop, all excited while the waiter looked uncomfortable, poured our glasses and slunk away. 9. He wrote a love poem about my brown eyes. My eyes are in fact green. 10. He decided that he didn't want to poop while staying with me in student halls, so he didn't poop for 10 days and seriously messed up his digestive system. 11. I found it charming and endearing that he did funny voices, made funny idiosyncratic jokes, and occasionally called me milady. Then I saw Anchorman. Oh, my god, he literally was doing a 24/7 Ron Burgundy impression, eclipsing his entire personality. I'm not sure I ever really met him. 12. I asked her out and she said yes.
My crazy sister tried to unalive our mom to get back at me. My younger sister has various mental health issues and a personal vendetta against me that I will never understand. She hurt me a lot when we were kids, and not in a sister's hair-pulling kind of way. We're talking about hospitalizing me, trying to test my underwater breathing ability, telling lies about me at school like how she said I got smacked by a bus in the 5th grade, and worst of all, tickling me for minutes upon minutes on end. When I was a sophomore, the issues between us only got worse. My mother would separate us when things seemed to go too far, however when we stayed at my dad's it was a much different story. He would get so angry and walk away. While eating dinner I tried to pause the TV to use the restroom and my sister got mad. I told her not to unpause it until I came back, but she didn't wait for me and I got upset and called her a beach. She decided violence would be the only answer, so she took the knife from her dinner plate and held it very close to me. She said that she wanted to end me. I ran to tell my dad, but he was out cold sleeping, so instead I went to bed and put a chair behind my door because I was scared. I actually called 911 but ended up saying it was an accidental dial because I was scared of what they would do to my sister. The next day my grandmother picked us up and took me to school, where I had a full-on panic attack in the bathroom mirror. My teacher heard me and brought me to the counselor's office, where I spilled everything. I waited in her office for what felt like a million years when my mom came in along with a police officer and my grandma. My grandma let me stay at hers until there was a better solution. 2 days later, we got a call that my sister was in a jail cell for the night after attacking my mother, who recently had stomach surgery, and trying to hurt her in the stitches. My mom ended up going to the hospital because of the bruising, and my sister was trying to claim mistreatment after my mother got her to the ground. She only managed to call 911 because my grandpa lived one house away and heard all the commotion. She ended up admitting to the officer she didn't want to end my mother, but she really wanted to hurt me because I took her life. Things only got more tense over time. My crazy sister tried to unalive our mom to get back at me. Christmas came around and my dad and I were celebrating. My dad dropped a Christmas present she'd gotten for her dog and needed the wrapping paper replaced. She waited until he went to the neighbor's house to ask for more wrapping paper, then took his phone, keys and wallet before trying to speed off in his car. She nearly wrecked us into the neighbor's fence before my dad jumped in front of the car and started banging on the window. Then at Christmas with our mom, I won $200 in lottery tickets, and she won only $8, which led to her wishing me dead and leaving without any of the gifts I bought her. Finally, the straw that broke the camel's back when she lunged at me from across the room during presents with my elderly grandmother. So I slammed the Christmas gift in my hand right into her ugly gob. This turned into a massive fight, presents being flung, glasses being smashed, grannies going wild, hair being pulled until we heard a scream. Our grandma had become collateral damage. One of the gifts that were flung struck her in the elderly noggin. She laid on the ground unconscious. Even my sister looked worried. I called 911 and they rushed her to hospital. We don't know if she will survive and my family blames me, not my sister. My sister laughed in my face and told me it's my turn to be the effed up one. I couldn't help but lay hands on her and security had to step in. I ended up on a psychiatric hold. My family chose to send me to a facility to recover. My sister visited me and gloated the entire time about how she has finally gotten rid of me.
I'm afraid that me and my husband may have caused an eating disorder in our daughters. I grew up as a fat kid. But when I got to college I began taking control of my health and lost 150 pounds. I had a personal trainer, who is now my husband. He was a huge health nut to begin with and really kept me on track and held me accountable. I've been able to keep the weight off for 20 years and are both giant health nuts. We have 3 kids, our daughters are 14, 12, and 9. We've always been strict about health with them. They each have a workout machine in their room which they have to use for an hour before dinner, and if we walk in and they aren't on their machines, they get phones and toys taken away. My 2 oldest girls have rebelled against this a lot. We've also been really strict with nutrition. We never had anything but fruits, veggies, and lean meats in our home, not even bread. At birthday parties, we took them home as soon as the cake and pizza came out, never took them trick or treating for Halloween, had teachers send them to different rooms when they had class parties with food, told their friends' parents not to feed them junk. I'll admit we definitely sheltered them from junk food in fear they'd grow up unhealthy. People thought we were ridiculous for the way we raised our kids and we were warned about them having eating disorders, but thought we were doing what was best and everyone was being ridiculous. 3 months ago, we found out that our oldest daughters, who go to the same middle school, were sneaking food at vending machines from school with their allowance cash. My husband found out about this from hearing snacks in their backpacks, and had a long talk with them about the dangers of eating those snacks, and took the snacks and their money. I heard him talking to them and he was gentle and calm about it, but both girls ended up in tears. Recently we got a call from our 12-year-old daughter's school counselor. Apparently she has been chewing up her food and then spitting it out, and making herself throw up in the bathroom when she ate lunch. They also talked to my 14-year-old, who said that lately she has been skipping breakfast and lunch a few times a week for the past couple of years because she was scared we would be mad at her when she ate. The counselor was not happy with me and recommended a treatment place for eating disorders. I feel like absolute crap, like we've caused our daughters to have eating disorders, and have to look out for signs in our 9-year-old. I called my mom for help. Instead she berated me and called me a piece of crap mom, which was the last thing I needed to hear. My parents are taking my girls for a couple of days while I get everything together and set things up with the eating disorder treatment place for when they come back. I don't know what to do. I feel proud that I didn't raise kids with a junk food addiction and I put their health before their tears about not eating pizza, but now it's come at a price. I've been inconsolable and my husband and I aren't talking right now as we don't know what to do. What happened at the craziest party you ever attended? I attended a New Year's party held at the house of a corn star. It was a villa and in Marbella, so we were destined for a good time. I know corn stars F like animals, but I didn't realize they party like the Spaniards too. Alcohol was most definitely involved and large amounts of booze were consumed by everyone. Considering this was a villa, the party held a total of about 150 people. Shenanigans started early when a girl was found unclothed going to town on herself on top of the Bentley parked outside. I however stayed on the calmer side, only for a while though. We played some drinking games and I refused to join. That was until the corn star herself asked me to join. Apparently she found me super attractive and made it her mission to sleep with me. She asked me to join the drinking games and seduced me with a game called Do or Drink that she found on Amazon. She explained the rules. Do the dare written on the card or take a shot. The game consisted of 7 of us while all others were off doing something else. During the course of this game secrets were revealed, clothes were removed, neck was given and alcohol was consumed. The 7 of us got super rowdy and were very, very intoxicated. There were only 4 of us left, as 2 guys and 1 girl who originally started turned to a card dare into the 2 guys tag teaming the girl and went to a separate room. That left the 4 of us. And I was the only guy. Thank the lucky stars and thank Do or Drink. Somehow we were uninterrupted by anyone else at the party. Sadly one of the 3 other girls had too much to drink and projectile vomited all over another girl in the game. Thankfully it was not the corn star. The projectile vomit girl excused herself to the bathroom and the other girl got up and left. That left just me and the corn star. Wasting no time, we played the game for another 2 rounds each before ending up in bed and going ham for 3 rounds. However, I was dumb. I went unprotected. A week later my pee started to itch and it started burning when I peed. I was back home in Ohio and decided to get tested. Lo and behold I got the clap from her. Grope my female friends at a party? Enjoy a taste of your own medicine. I am a 19-year-old freshman, and this year I joined a frat for the first time. It's been a weird experience, and I've found most stereotypes about this lifestyle to be true. In all honesty, before this incident, I was already thinking about leaving my frat since I didn't agree with the way my frat brothers acted or the type of behaviors they tolerated from their friends. Some of my frat brothers have also been giving me poop since many of my best friends happen to be female. There has been more than one instance where one of my frat brothers has made fun of me for keeping those girls around for nothing. Frankly, I don't know how to explain to grown men why friendship is meaningful and important and that it's normal to have friends of all genders. I've always had girl and guy best friends, and I never thought it was weird and still don't. Girl friendship can give you support and advice that you just can't get from other guys, but that doesn't mean I want to sleep with all my friends who are girls. They're just people, and I'm grateful to have a good amount of friends that I trust, no matter what gender they are. Anyway, I take my best friends out to parties often, and last weekend I invited a couple of my close female friends to a party that my frat was throwing. It was the first time they were coming to my frat, so I stayed close by them and made sure they were having a good time. Everything had been going well until I saw one of my a-hole frat brothers grab and squeeze one of my best friend's butts. He came out of nowhere and just laughed like a dickhead after she pushed him off. I saw this happen from a couple of feet away and realized that I had just effing had it with my frat brothers acting like mother effing animals. I marched over to him and said, "You like squeezing other people's poop?" "Yeah?" And I grabbed his balls and crushed them in my fist. He instantly started screaming and crumpled into a ball. On the floor, this was one of my frat brothers who had made fun of me for having chick friends before, so it honestly felt satisfying to see him writhing in pain on the floor. Anyway, it escalated into a huge scene. Another one of my frat brothers swung at me after seeing what I had done, and I had to knock him out. I gathered my friends before more guys could jump me, and we just got the hell out of there. I bought my friends food, and we had a long talk after that party. They made me realize that I would never fit into that environment with the values I had. I decided I'm going to go back to the house this week to collect my things, and never look back. I just wanted to feel like I was part of a community in college, but I know there must be better people to associate than a-holes like that. Escape room employees, what's the weirdest way you've seen customers try and solve an escape room? A friend of mine works for an escape room and he told me one about a puzzle where the key to the next door was shackled to a desk by a combination lock. What you are supposed to do is figure out the combination for the lock from the clues around the room to free the key. What one group decided to do instead was get a guy on each corner and pick up the 150-pound desk and carry it across the room, slide the key into the lock, and then rotate the entire desk to unlock the door. There was a story on here a while ago about a guy in a group of 4 who took a broom from the first room because it had to be for something. He said it looked too out of place to not be needed. Well, he was half right. It was out of place, but that's because it was the broom used by employees to clean the room. It was simply forgotten when they cleaned last time. The guys giving hints thought it was hilarious that this guy carried a broom through 4 rooms expecting it to be the key to their escape at some point. I thought that was funny as hell. Went on a team building escape room and ended up in a room with a colleague we'll call Jeff. Jeff is profoundly deaf and a large part of this particular room involved listening to messages on dictaphones that could be found in different drawers, etc. About 10 minutes into the timer, an employee burst into the room in a panic and we turned to find Jeff taking the dictaphone apart piece by piece because he had no idea it was making any sound. He was not supposed to do that, still a top bloke.
Serious, what is a surprisingly easy way to accidentally die? I have a friend who ate some Chinese food one day, cashew chicken, to be exact, then went for a run about an hour later. He made the unfortunate discovery that there is an obscure allergy where exercising after eating something with celery in it can cause anaphylaxis. He was minutes away from dying. He survived because a few weeks before that, he discovered his next-door neighbors were paramedics who had saved him after crashing his bicycle in gravel at around 40 miles per hour. He ran to their house and they saved his life, again. My cousin got up in the night to use the toilet. Tripped in the dark, hit her head, went back to bed and never woke up. Falling off a small ladder just enough airtime to flip over and land on your head. Electricity. We use a ton of it, and it's surprisingly easy to mess up. Picking up a live cone snail at the beach. Thousands die of drowning every year. Ocean currents nothing to F with. Getting really drunk, and then choking to death on your vomit. Slipping in the shower. Back in 7th grade I went to school with a kid. He got an ear infection at first, then in a series of quick unfortunate events, it went to his brain and killed him.
What is the most messed up drama in your small town? My English told us a story about the time that there was a well-known couple at the time, typical cheerleader and football star type deal. They were sort of off and on again, but it was obvious they did care about each other despite teenage drama. Well, at point when they were off again, she went on a date with a new guy. He ended up slipping something into her drink, and then forcing himself onto her. He was apparently hooked on dope himself. She came home in tears to her older brother and told him what happened. Older brother said he'd handle it. He called the on-off boyfriend, who was also enraged. They both knew the guy who did it, so they pretended to invite him out to a bonfire. The boyfriend picked him up in his truck and drove him to the bonfire. The bonfire was a stump in the middle of nowhere on a family member's property. They chained the guy to it and both took turns swinging at his manhood with a sledgehammer. On some Triple H type stuff. They untied him when they were done and left him there. He ended up at the ER later that night. The boyfriend and brother both knew the sheriff, because small town. So they called the sheriff to tell him exactly what they did and why. When he showed up to the hospital, the sledgehammer dude tried to explain what happened, but the sheriff said, "Sounds to me like a domestic issue," and refused to charge the boyfriend or brother with anything because there was no proof of what happened. The guy got fixed up at the hospital, as much as they could, and left town shortly after graduation. Boyfriend and girlfriend got back together and didn't break up again. They get married after college, have kids, happy ending. Every week I go to see my birth mother that abandoned me, but she doesn't know that it's me. This is a tough story to tell, but I want to get it off my chest. It all began when my birth mom was only 14 years old when she gave birth to me. At that time, she made the brave decision to give me up for adoption. My adoptive parents shared stories about her as I grew up, and I still have this precious letter she wrote, asking if they could give it to me someday. Reading her letters was so surreal. Imagine, it was written by a kid, apologizing for not being able to be my mommy but hoping I'm happy. She even said she was open to staying in touch, but things got tricky when we had to move for my dad's job when I was 11, making it hard to find her. But guess what? I eventually found her. Now she works at a little restaurant, and I secretly visit to chat with her. It's funny, she doesn't know it's me, but we talk like old pals. She's a kind lady, and sometimes when she calls me honey or uses other terms like that, I want to reveal myself, but it's kinda nerve-wracking. I'm scared that she won't remember who I am, or that she won't have an extreme reaction. I don't know, I just want her to seem extremely happy, the way I was when I first saw her in that restaurant. I want her to feel the way I felt reading her letters when I was a kid. I drive 2 hours every week to see her, and she already recognizes me because of my frequent visits. She always greets me with a big smile when it's not too busy. If only she knew my true identity, things would get even more exciting.
My sister dropped off her 6-day-old baby at my doorstep so she could have time for herself. I told her to pick the baby back up, or I would call CPS for abandonment. For the last few weeks of my younger sister's pregnancy, she has demanded that my husband and I babysit her newborn every Friday morning to Sunday evening so she and her husband can have some cool-off time from being parents. I have laughed at her each time and quickly shut it down. Nope, I won't be. And she gets mad that I'm not helping her out. She then got our mother involved. Mom called me and asked why I was being a self-centered bitch, so selfish, and that she didn't raise me this way. I told her I was a grown-ass woman with my own house and life, that if I wanted to watch kids as a second job, I'd effing have some. She sputtered out something about me being a horrible person and hung up on me. My husband and my one aunt are 100% with me. However, my mom, dad, the other 900 family members, and friends got involved, calling me out on Facebook or blowing up my phone. My mom knows the full story of what my sister is asking. She sees no issues with my sister getting this as well. She did the same thing with me when I was a bit older when I had to care for my younger sister so she could have time to relax. I have never had a good relationship with my family besides my youngest sister, aunt, and grandparents. I talk to my mom, other sister, and dad maybe twice a month. So whenever family/friends message me about babysitting or give me crap about it, my favorite response has been, "You're right. I am selfish and irresponsible and probably not fit to take the baby this weekend, but I can be sure to let a sister know you volunteered your time this week to help her out." Funny enough, everyone seems to have some generic excuse for why they can't or won't, like, "I worked all week. It's my wind down time." Not my child, not my responsibility, but somehow it's mine. My all-time favorite response is, "It is your responsibility as the oldest to ensure your siblings don't make mistakes, and if they do, you take responsibility and don't let them ruin their lives over it. They're still kids who need to have fun." You had your turn. When the baby was just under 2 weeks old, my sister, her husband, and our mother left multiple messages and voicemails about when they would drop the baby off. Besides a quick "not watching your baby this weekend," I have not answered or responded about it. My husband and I took some advice from my aunt to invest in a doorbell camera because my mother and sister attempted to drop the baby off at my doorstep 6 days after it was born, knocked, and tried to run. I spoke through the doorbell and told them they had exactly 2 minutes to pick the baby back up, or I was calling CPS for abandonment. My youngest sister, 16F, called me about an hour afterward, explaining our mother had attempted to leave the baby with her, but it only earned Mom a dirty look, while the youngest sister simply stepped over the carrier and walked out of the house. She has been staying with us since. We have a meeting with a lawyer to see if we have any ground to stand on for her to come and live with us permanently, as our parents are threatening to call the police on my husband and me for kidnapping our youngest sister as a hostage. Oh, before I forget this level of beautiful petty, our aunt, the only one who has supported us, surprised my youngest sister, husband, and me, took us out to her cabin for the weekend, where the youngest sister posted pictures and tagged our mother, sister, and her husband with captions. Man, such an amazing weekend. I'm sure you guys were free to join.
My little brother thinks I didn't notice how he cut corners for himself when we weren't doing well financially. Me and my little brother share an apartment together, and within the last 2 months, all bills were due at the same time, including electricity, gas, taxes, internet and much more, and we had to pay a lot of extra for electricity, for example. The result was that although we both make a decent amount, our accounts were empty pretty quickly, and on top of that, me being a freelancer, I had some problems keeping my business on top. For these 2 months my brother who was employed had to pay for almost everything, which was ironic because before that I made more than him. And during that time I noticed something. He not only lost his financial freedom during this time, which is already huge, but even though he was responsible for paying everything, he still tried to make sure that I wouldn't have to give up my comfort. To give you an example, I tell you about our behavior when we went grocery shopping. Usually we've got enough to keep both of us fed for 2 weeks at least. But while I bought enough again so that I had something for 2 weeks, he bought much less. He bought so little that with 3 meals a day he could get by for 3 to 4 days at most. He even told me that if I wanted to go grocery shopping more than twice a month then we could do it, but then we just get something for me. But that wasn't the only thing. He had an appointment at the hairdresser and chiropractor. Cancelled it to save money for my orthodontist appointment, which he considered more important. These are just 2 of many things he did so that I don't lose my comfort. He even went this far to not get help because I was sick at the same time. In May, when we both got sick from the virus, he decided not to visit the doctor so that I could go. Next month I will make an amount which might be the biggest of this year so far. And as soon as I have money again, I'll make sure to pay him back everything. I'll make sure to get him an extra amount of groceries. I will pay for his appointments. He thinks I don't know, but I do, and I'm so grateful for having him as my brother. I don't take his efforts for granted. And I make sure he will see how much I appreciated it. What's the quickest way you got lucky with a girl? I won't let my new girlfriend meet my best friend cause I'm low-key scared she might fall for him. The thing is, I never would have started dating my girlfriend if I didn't learn my best friend's tricks. He always knew how to pull a lady. Whenever we went out and saw a girl he found attractive, he sweet-talked her, told some funny jokes, and confidently asked for her number. He could take them to 7-Eleven and still get lucky. If he dated a girl for a while and they broke up, I never heard them say anything about him. They always said he was charming and caring and knew how to be there for them. I felt like a side character compared to him. I was jealous of his charisma and wanted to be as confident as him, but we were on opposite spectrums. He was the life of the party. Meanwhile, I never even held hands with a girl. It took us going to a party together for me to make a change. I was extremely reluctant about going, but I came to my senses and realized that if I wanted to live like he did, I had to do things he liked. So, we went to the party together and I followed his every move. If he drank a shot, so did I. If he danced on the dance floor, so did I. It was awkward and weird to get out of my comfort zone, but it felt worth it because I was having a lot of fun. I realized I never partied properly because I was always in the corner staring at everybody having fun, wishing I could easily do that. And there I was doing just that. But I returned to reality when my friend started flirting with a girl. I tried to flirt with the girl's friend, but she was not having it. She kept giving me the cold shoulder, seemed interested in everything I had to say, and even walked away while I was talking to her. My friend's skills of talking to girls were something that I couldn't replicate. Or so I thought. The next night, I woke up with one goal in mind: to get girls. So, I did it the best way I could think of, by downloading Tinder. However, setting up my profile was impossible because I had no idea how to make a woman interested in me. My bio was also boring because I didn't have any exciting hobbies, and I didn't have any pictures that were flattering enough for Tinder. In the end, I gave up and put whatever I could think of and tried not to care too much about it because I was new to online dating. I wasn't expecting a lot of matches, but my messages were drier than a Popeye's biscuit. And the one time a girl and I matched, I had no idea how to talk to her. I never thought I would be the type to ask a woman, "What are you doing?" every 5 minutes, but here I was doing that. She never talked to me again. I got fed up with my lack of social skills and inability to flirt, and I was determined to change. So, I asked my friend, since he was the only woman expert I knew. I called him and begged for him to share his secret sauce, or give me a few tips on how to talk to women. That's when he revealed something shocking. He used to be just like me, introverted, boring, and he didn't know a thing about women. I asked how he was able to change because I needed to change as well. He told me to use a dating AI and listed off some specific ones, but he said Pickup Pal helped him flirt better, so he recommended that to me the most. Obviously, I didn't believe him and thought he wanted to gatekeep his secret because there was no way an app could change an introvert into a playboy. But he was literal proof that it could, and I rarely saw him strike out with a girl. Honestly, I didn't want to take his advice because I thought he was messing with me. So, I started searching on Google to learn about women and how to interact with them. But every website I saw had the same generic information. Say hello, be yourself, be confident. None of that had worked because after saying hello, I would start stuttering and fumbling over my words. And I couldn't be confident because I didn't know how to. At that point, I was getting desperate, and it was clear the only way to break out of my monotonous routine was to download the dating AI. It couldn't hurt to try at this point, and even though I still didn't have high expectations for it, the app worked out better than I thought it would. I used it to fix my Tinder profile because it had a bio generator and photo analyzer. For my bio, I listed some of my interests and copied what it generated onto my Tinder profile, and it chose the best pictures to use, which, thank God, because I originally had a picture of me holding a fish on my profile, and I thought that was okay. The app told me to get rid of that first. It could also generate a response to a message to keep the conversation going, but I didn't have a use for that yet. However, with a new bio and pictures, I had 4 matches in just 3 days, and I used the dating AI on all of them. All my conversations went well because I was constantly generating interesting replies, and the women seemed interested in getting to know me. I was having fun texting people, and my phone was constantly blowing up from their messages. But it didn't take me long to realize I was only connecting with one girl since we had the most in common. We started bonding over One Piece and Valorant, and our conversations quickly moved on to other interests. Talking to her felt natural, and I only used the AI when our conversations started dying because I never wanted to stop talking to this girl. After 3 weeks of nonstop texting, I asked her out on a date. She said yes, but then realized I had no idea where to take her. I was about to freak out, but I checked the AI to see if it had anything that would help me, and it had a date generator. All I had to do was put a location and her interests, and then it would pick the perfect places to take her. I chose to take her to this popular Mexican restaurant, and she loved the food. I was mostly worried about our date being awkward or me not knowing what to say because it felt like I had relied too much on the AI to help me. But our conversation went smoothly, just like it did over text, and using the AI consistently meant I knew what to say when our talks died down. Talking about things I liked and asking her if she liked it too had us talking for a while, and I got to know her by asking about her past. That was my first date, and I enjoyed it so much that I couldn't wait to go out with her again. Our conversations extended past texting, and it was clear we were both into each other, so I asked her to be my girlfriend. We've only been dating for 2 months, but I'm really happy with her. Though I'll admit, I still use Pickup Pal when I want to take her on dates because I always want things to be perfect for her. I really hope she never finds out. Have you ever felt bad about not finishing a movie or show because of your date? I went to see Spider-Man with this girl I'd been casually seeing for a few weeks. As the movie was reaching its climax, she said she wanted to leave before the end credits. Not wanting to be an asshole, I agreed and we left together. But as we were walking to her car, she mentioned how much she regretted not staying for the end credits. In response, I just said yeah, me too before saying goodbye. On my drive home afterwards, my mind was racing with thoughts of regret and guilt about what had happened. When I finally got home and went to bed that night, all these thoughts were still swirling around in my head until eventually I fell asleep. The next morning when I woke up though, I decided it would be best if sent her a text saying that I hadn't been feeling well during the movie, so that's why we had left early, which was technically true but not really what happened at all. Now here I am feeling like a total dickhead for lying, but also knowing deep down that this might have been the right decision even though it doesn't seem like it on the surface.
My teenage daughter is having intimacy with my best friend. My daughter Sam knew my best friend Jamie as a toddler until we lost touch. He came back into my life when Sam was 12. He was at every major holiday with our family from Halloween to Christmas to summer bonfires. She continued to call him Uncle Dad until she was 18, then suddenly stopped. I figured it was because she was an adult with a baby now and never questioned it. Jamie and I slept together twice since Sam was 12, and technically I didn't cheat on my husband, Jerry. Early in our marriage, Jerry and I decided to not be completely monogamous. Jerry is gone more often than he is home. We had a rule to be honest if we slept with other people, but we never shared who we were with. I slept with Jamie over Christmas when my husband was gone as a one-time thing as we were both lonely. Then a year ago, Jamie came on to me at a family bonfire. He stayed behind to help clean up and we ended up having intimacy. It was more emotional than I was prepared for, and he told me he loved me after. I was completely not for it. I told him I was sorry but I loved my husband and I was okay with something just casual. He said he didn't want to be casual and he respected my decision. I let him stay the night and in the morning I told him we couldn't do this again, and he reluctantly agreed. When I found out my daughter was pregnant from my best friend Jamie, my heart stopped. I found out my daughter's baby is due in November. Everyone is absolutely thrilled for her. Honestly, I'm sick to my stomach because I have to plaster a fake smile and pretend I'm okay with this. Jerry is thrilled that Jamie is going to be a part of the family. I have friends that say it's just peaches that Sam finally gets to be a mom, even though she already had a chance at 16, then ended up laying hands on the baby. I feel like everybody has gone crazy, but they don't know the truth. I know I should tell them, but it will be a crap storm, so I'm trying to do this delicately. As for Jamie, he is also thrilled about this. He has it all over their Facebook that he and Sam are together. And he's always talking about how huge Sam's belly is growing. Honestly, I don't know if he's trying to make me jealous. But this feeling I have is rage and shame. I told Jerry that I want to close our relationship. I haven't been with anybody else besides my husband since I last slept with Jamie. I told Jerry I'm not interested in pursuing other relationships at this time. He didn't have a problem with it. Jerry is an angel. I finally got the courage to ask Jamie when he and my daughter started sleeping together. He said that at her 18th birthday party, he was very intoxicated and they made out a little and she gave him neck. This man is 37. I puked when I read that. I told him that it wasn't okay that happened. Sam was engaged at the time and I remember at the party she was still calling him Uncle Daddy, then stopped after. He told me he knew it was wrong, that he gets a thrill being the other guy. He swore to me they didn't do anything else until 6 months ago. I told him I believe him when I really don't. I don't know what to believe. I'm so emotionally drained at this point. I don't want my daughter to have this baby, at all.